Meeting to order. This is the conclusion of a council and committee meeting that started last Monday, and we couldn't finish the agenda, so we'll be continuing on. And when we left off, we had just finished doing, I believe, planning and corporate services. So now we're going to infrastructure services, and that would be you, Councillor Zanko, I believe.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Infrastructure Services is now in session. We don't have any presentations or delegations this evening. So first on our agenda under infrastructure is report IS-01-2019. It's road condition assessment and proposed 5-year resurfacing plan. Can I get a mover, Your Worship? This report's on the floor if anyone has any questions or comments. Your Worship?
Yeah, this is a report that we've been waiting for some time, and it outlines for us some of the things that we can do to not only resurface some of the, well, most of the roads in town, but also find a way that we can maintain them and get some greater longevity out of them. I had a couple of questions, though, with respect to a couple of things. Number one had to do with rural roads, and that was an issue for some people living in the rural areas where there's not a lot of traffic and not a lot of houses, but the roads nonetheless are thoroughfares for the people that live on them. So I'm wondering if the Director of Infrastructure Services has any comments about developing a strategy or at least working that into this assessment and the work scheme that comes out of it.
Mr. Walsh?
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. The program that supports the results of this document has a number of parameters that we can adjust from zero importance to all-encompassing. In that, we do have the option of setting rural roads at a higher or less importance than urban roads. Through our setup of this, we have not placed any greater nor any less importance of rural roads against urban roads. So in that sense, infrastructure services is looking at all roads as within their setting as equal importance.
Your Worship?
So that's something that I think we maybe want to look further at, because the roads that are in the urban areas are treated differently than the rural roads. They're different surface treatments typically and seem to get more attention. And there's a reason, there are policy reasons for that. One of the roads that I asked Mr. Walsh about, Madam Chair, was Centralia Avenue. It's referred to in this report, the sections south of Dominion Road and north of Nye to Garrison Road. But the section between Nye and Dominion is not referred to. And I asked Mr. Walsh about that because as I travel around this town, I happen to think that's the worst section of road that's traveled by people in the town. So I wonder if we could get an explanation of where that fits in to this program, if it fits into this program at all.
Mr. Walsh, could you comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This program has focused on resurfacing. The section that the Mayor references on Centralia, I agree, is in dire straits. It's in such poor condition that it didn't make our resurfacing program, meaning that its PCI is below the threshold of what this program spits out. We have noted the Mayor's concerns, and we support those concerns ourselves. We're planning to reconstruct that section in 2020.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Your Worship?
Yeah, just so then going to the scenarios that are referred to in the report, I wonder if we could get an explanation as to why scenario 3 would end up with us having a better PCI after 10 years than scenario 1, where we would be spending more money, and how that's possible.
Mr. Walsh?
Madam Chair, the program is called Decision Optimization, and although we're not completely cognizant of the machinations of how the program works, In essence, what it does is if a road reaches a certain condition, a certain poor condition, it begins to ignore that road, meaning don't put any more money into that road, just let it go. So what you see in scenario 3 is the program doing just that, letting roads degrade to the point of failure, end of life. You'll notice in that scenario that the network pavement index continues to fall for a number of years before it starts to rise. Staff do not support that scenario. Even though we're spending less money in the next 10 years, we don't feel that letting the road condition network fall is very conducive to anyone's interest in the town.
Well, I certainly agree with that. So the way I've interpreted this based on information that I've received, Madam Chair, is that costs such as reconstruction are not really included in this budget. This is a resurfacing budget. And so the cost of reconstruction would be part of our capital projects budget. And some of the projects where we do a complete reconstruction, including underground work, would also not be included in this. So just to maybe get the director to confirm this, this is only roads resurfacing, and this doesn't include all of the costs that it's going to take in order to get our roads up to an acceptable condition.
Mr. Walsh, can you confirm that? I know you and I had a similar conversation, and I believe what the mayor is saying is to be correct, but I just want to confirm.
Yes, that is correct, Madam Chair. You'll see at the end of every year in the appendix, we're spending about $1.2 million. That is just the resurfacing program. We spend about $2.4 or $2.5 million a year on total road reconstruction, which includes resurfacing, but also includes reconstructions through our comprehensive infrastructure renewal program.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Yeah, I don't want to monopolize this, but I have two other questions. The first is, so this is a tool that also works in conjunction with the asset management plan in terms of assisting us to develop long-term maintenance strategies as well with respect to this part of our infrastructure?
Mr. Walsh?
Again, that's correct.
And finally, is there any reason why we wouldn't borrow money, a sum of money, to accelerate some of the resurfacing, as opposed to simply spread this money out over the long term?
Mr. Walsh or Mr. Jansen, did you want to take that question?
I'll start. Mr. Jansen may want to chime in a bit. 2 points I'd like to make. One, we have a policy on not borrowing on existing infrastructure. I support that to a point. If we're going to borrow money on existing infrastructure, I think there are better things to invest that money in, such as our wastewater system and to address extraneous flow. I'm sorry, those are my 2 points.
Anything further, Your Worship?
Mr. Jansen, want to chime in?
Mr. Jansen?
Sure. I would have similar comments. It's not a policy, but it is a practice of the town that we reserve debt, and we do have considerable debt capacity as a town, but for growth assets. So in this case, we have made a lot of effort over the last number of years to increase the annual contribution towards these types of works. So we're in a much better place for that. And just a reminder as well, with debt costs, of course, does come annual costs to the town as well in the form of debt payments and debt interest. So the preference in this case that we were looking at was to do it with the annual levy.
Right. So is staff looking for a recommendation with respect to which scenario?
Mr. Walsh, or is this just for information purposes at this point?
Madam Chair, the resurfacing program put in front of council is based on a $1.3 million, $1.2 million $1.3 million resurfacing budget. That's what the report is based on. That's what we will be bringing forward for the 2019 capital program. We can discuss a recommendation to get to a higher level. I don't think we need to go to 1.8 million. I think 1.5 is about the right number for resurfacing. We can address that later in the year. I would prefer that if we do that, it would take effect for the 2019 budget. Sorry, the 2020 budget.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Does any members of council have questions? Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Councillor Zanko. My question is, Mayor Redekop did ask some of my questions. One of the answers was that there are urban area roads and there are rural area roads, and they're treated differently. My understanding that even within urban areas, the roads are treated differently. And I bring up the example of in Black Creek. We would think that Black Creek, the river trail, is an urban area. It has houses all along, and it definitely has a different road treatment than a lot of the other urban areas that I see in Fort Erie and in Ridgeway. Then that, forgive me, I can't remember whether it was double mix. There was a treatment that the residents were very, very unhappy with. They were actually happier with the road before it was fixed. And I'm hoping that practice where they put I think it's tar and chip, if I'm not mistaken, should not be used on urban roads, particularly when there are no sidewalks, so that individuals have to basically use the road for walking. I've had numerous complaints about that road since it's been tar and chipped in regards to not being able to, it's not easy to ride the bikes, they're not riding the bikes now, I know it's wintertime, but riding their bikes, pushing the carriage, pulling a wagon with their kids can't, rollerblade on it, they can't ride their bikes on it, they can't walk their pets on it, the dogs don't like it hurts their feet, and for a number of reasons. And I don't understand why River Trail would have got that treatment. It's done, and I understand there's a second stage to this treatment, and maybe people will be happier then. But again, this is an urban area. They pay very high taxes in that area. It's well populated, and I don't think tar and chip met the residents' needs. And it's, again, it's highly used roads, very highly developed area. And I'm hoping I'm not going to see that. I see parts of Black Creek are on here again, and different Black Creek Road and other roads, and I'm hoping they're not going to get the tar and chip treatment, but they're going to get the asphalt treatment. I don't know if Mr. Walsh wants to comment on that.
Mr. Walsh, did you want to comment on that?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Councillor Noyes. I empathize with the residents there. In the case of River Trail, the work we did last year, we replaced what was there. It was a surface treated road. You and I have shared discussions that urban roads should probably be hot mix asphalt, your typical hard surface. So we'll look into that further.
And thank you for that explanation. The other question too, and I think again, Mayor Redekop did comment on it in regards to the reconstruction of roads. And there are roads that I'm going to be selfish here and use Ott Road. I've lived there 37 years and it wasn't done before. We've had no we've had no major repairs to that road other than, patch and fill when a water main breaks and things like that. And there's another road too, West Main Street from Coral Avenue up has had no attention in, again, the 37 years that I've lived there, and the explanation I was given, and I can appreciate it, that they have deteriorated to the point that they have to be reconstructed. Again, it's a shame that, again, we're talking about an urban area, we're talking about a well-populated area, we're talking about roads that are used to access the nearby parks, and again, no sidewalks on Ott Road. So people are, again, walking on those roads that are in very poor condition, to the point that I think, point of failure and end of life. And it's really hard for the residents to accept that after 37 years, they're still 2 or 3, maybe 4 years down the road before they're going to see any improvements.
Thank you, Councillor Noyes, and I agree. I think we all have roads in our wards. I know I certainly have roads in my wards that are exactly how you described, and I'm hopeful that maybe this council will agree to put some extra funding towards our infrastructure to expedite some of these roads that are well overdue. Do you have anything further? Okay. I think Councillor Lubert's had his head up first. Councillor Butler?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Walsh. What is the flexibility to have some of the roads scheduled for this year put off and the most immediate troublesome roads put into 2019? Because, for example, Park Street has been waiting for a very, very long time to have their street done. I actually went out after the elections to have a petition done and gathered some signatures. And that's just one example from Far Road through to all the way through to, I want to say Dominion. Actually, it's really in bad shape. Same with Windmill Point Road from Thunder Bay to Dominion Road. I mean, it's just really engulfed by one big pothole. And the other thing that I wanted to mention was the enormity of potholes that are throughout the Thunder Bay area and also through Oak Hill is starting to become problematic. And I thought that we had a new system that we were going to, but perhaps you can just elaborate on that.
Mr. Walsh, did you want to maybe explain the design work project and then when actual road works gets done to kind of put timeframes in perspective, maybe, to Councillor Butler's first question?
Madam Chair, through you to the councillor, I'd prefer not to defer roads if they are on this list. This program is supposed to spit out the optimized solution for all of our future road needs, such that we can extend the life of roads as much as possible. In essence, what it's doing is keeping the good roads good and the roads that are in less desirable condition, letting them fall to a worse point. Through that, the town average will continue to climb if we keep spending $1.3 million, which is a good thing. I do empathize with your concerns about doing the worst roads first, but that may ignore an opportunity to do a little bit of maintenance now on a road rather than a lot of maintenance a few years down the road. In the long term, it's not the best solution for the town's taxpayers.
Madam Chair, thank you. Through you to Mr. Walsh. I understand the philosophy behind that, but I would like to challenge you to drive down some of those roads once the snow melts, and I'll send you a list of the roads that really need immediate attention that aren't on there. And I don't know what the solution is because Madam Chair had a road that was similar to the roads that I'm experiencing, and the neighbors were up in arms, and you found a solution and had Mr. Walsh take a look at that. I'm in the same similar boat where where the roads are in such a mess where the cars are getting damaged by the amount of potholes that are on the road. But if you could take a look at the list that I send you, that would be awesome.
I could do that. Okay,
thank you.
I think, Councillor Butler, the road that you're referring to, we were able to expedite the design work, which kind of created a shelf-ready project if funding was to be able to well, if funding became available. So the road actually itself didn't get expedited, but design work for it did.
I appreciate that explanation. Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? That motion carries. Does any member of council have any items of new business or inquiries? Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Councillor Zanko. My question again, Mr. Walsh and I've had an opportunity discussing this today, was Burger Road and the crossing arms at the railroad that crosses there, obviously, that they do have the arms and the train is still blowing the horn. And the residents that are living nearby are asking why. And I've asked Mr. Walsh if he would, if he had the opportunity, and I'm not sure if he did, is that if there's crossing arms, my understanding is all the town has to do is ask them not to blow the horn. Like there's a process involved, and I'm just wondering if Mr. Walsh can elaborate on that at all, and what would be the next steps to do?
Mr. Walsh?
Through you, Madam Chair, to Councillor Noyes, that's my understanding as well. I'm not positive on that, though. I'll get together with the CAO. We'll discuss this matter further and contact CN on the issue.
Anything further, Ms. Noyes?
Nothing further.
Councillor Butler?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Walsh. I had a number of complaints that came through over the weekend with respect to snowmobiles on the trails. Is there anything that we can do to try to prevent that from happening?
Mr. Walsh?
I'm gonna, if you don't mind, Madam Chair, if I could defer this to Rick Brady. Mr. Brady's in charge of bylaw enforcement, and at this point, it is a bylaw enforcement issue, I believe.
Mr. Brady?
One of the things that the residents can do is phone the police. Those snowmobiles are not supposed to be on those trails. In particular, if they're on the Friendship Trail, it's quite unsafe. That's what I would recommend.
Thank you, Madam
Councillor
Chair. Just as a follow-up to that, the residents recognize that they should be calling the police. Unfortunately, they recognize also that it was a terrible weekend for accidents, and so they knew that the police wouldn't. And the second item of thought was that, how do they catch them?
They park a car at one end, and they park a car at the other.
Wait for them to come back.
Do you have anything further, Councillor Butler? Does any members of council have any inquiries or new business? Mr. Walsh, I wanted to just compliment you and your team for the snow removal over the weekend. We had a lot of snow, and your team really worked hard. The roads were cleared and very safe to drive in a very short amount of time. So I know your team worked really hard, and we appreciate that. Does any members of council have any questions regarding the business status report? Seeing none, I will hand the chair back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Councillor Zanko. That takes us to Corporate and Community Services. That is Councillor McDermott.
Thank you, Worship. Corporate Community Services now in session. We have no presentations and delegations. We have no reports. Anybody have any new business inquiries? Councillor Butler?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So over the weekend, I received numerous phone calls with respect to break-ins during the past week in the Thunder Bay area, primarily break-ins in vehicles and some attempted break-ins into homes while the homeowners were there. And I know that we've had a problem, and it was reduced. It seems to be spiking in the Ridgeway area. I'm wondering if there is anything that we can do to create more of a police presence and get a report with respect to that.
Can I handle that?
Through you, Chair, to the councillor. You may not be aware, but we have a new staff sergeant in town in Fort Erie. The mayor and I are meeting with this individual. It's something that we can bring up with them. I know when we had the issue in Bridgeburg in Ward 2 area, we did have a public meeting here. Great turnout. The police were here, 3 police officers. The do's and don'ts of what you should be looking for, what you can do and what you should do. So if the councillor prefers, we could arrange another public meeting, but I would suggest that give us an opportunity to meet with the new staff sergeant and see what they're willing to do for us.
Councillor Butler?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just as a follow-up, I don't know that any of the residents from Ridgeway were at that public meeting, and I can certainly reach out to them to see if they would like that. I think their main concern is to find out if they can have more police presence at this point. And I guess my question would be, did the offenders from the Bridgeburg area move to Ridgeway?
Through you, Chair, to the councillor, I don't think I can answer that, but we definitely will have a chat with the staff sergeant and see if we can increase the police presence in that area. Excuse me.
Anything further, Councillor Butler? Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Cookett. We had discussed neighborhood watch committees, and I know Councillor Dubineau had brought forward a request. I believe you were going to look into this. Niagara and the Lake had a similar situation. And I also have residents that are interested in creating the neighborhood watch. I'm just wondering if you were able to provide any additional information. And my second question, if you haven't, what really stops us from creating our own neighborhood watch?
To your first question, we did reach out or look into what Niagara and the Lake does. They have a safety committee. It doesn't meet very often. It meets once or twice a year. We can provide that information to council through a report, information report, and we could create this committee. I don't really see a lot of what it can do. I think us meeting with the staff sergeant is probably a better approach. To your second question about a community watch, we can provide you with some information with that as well. I know there's informal community watch in the Bridgebury area and so forth, but I'd be hesitant to suggest that, because we did have one gentleman that came and spoke at the public meeting and ended up getting into a fight, and it was a nasty situation. So I'd be very careful of what you do as a community watch. It's one thing to watch the neighborhood, call the police, but I would not recommend or suggest that you approach the individuals. That can get very dangerous. So it's something we can speak further about if you like.
Thank you. Just a comment further. I know with some of my constituents, I think what they're referring to as a community watch is, you know, a number of individuals are retired and constantly walking throughout the area, and I think what they were more or less thinking is perhaps some sort of a group that if there was something suspicious, they could report this to the authorities perhaps more on a direct level, and be kind of advocating for the area as far as safety goes. But when, and I'm just making this comment because when you do speak with a sergeant, maybe that's an idea that you could bring forward.
It's a great idea.
Thanks.
Seeing none, are there any questions with regards to the business status report? Seeing none, Chair over.
Thank you, Councilor McDermott. That takes us to scheduling of meetings. Are there any meetings scheduled? I guess we have a budget meeting on, is it this Wednesday? That's at 6 o'clock here. Any other meetings? Councilor Noyes and then Councilor Zanko.
This is probably more prone to towards 6. There is on January 31st, a Thursday night, there's going to be a meeting at the community hall there for the residents in regards the meeting with the developer as the development behind River Trail starts.
Where is that?
That's at the Black Creek Community Center.
And the time?
I think it's 6:30 to 7:30. But there was a letter that went out, and I really do appreciate the fact that the staff has sent a letter to the residents in that area, letting them know, because that was a big concern of theirs. And we want them all on the same page, and we all want them to be pro-development.
Thank you. Councilor Zanko.
Thank you, Your Worship. We have a Fiat meeting tomorrow here, which is January 22nd at 5:30 p.m. in Conference Room 1, again at the town. We also have a EDTC board meeting on Thursday, January 24th at 5:30, which is being held at the EDTC.
It being the Fort Erie Active Transportation.
Sorry, Fort Erie Active Transportation Committee.
Okay. Any other meetings? Councilor Dubineau.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Community Gaming Development Corporation will have a meeting here at Town Hall on Wednesday, January 23rd, starting at 5:30.
What time does our budget meeting start? 6? Any other meetings? Councilor Luberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Tomorrow evening, 6 o'clock, the Crystal Beach BIA is having a meeting at the Crystal Beach Fire Hall.
Okay, any other meetings? If none, motion to adjourn. Councilor Zanko, all those in favor? That is carried. So that takes us then to the special council meeting that we didn't reach last Monday night. And I'll call that meeting to order. Madam Clerk, the roll call.
All members of council are present, Your Worship.
There are no announcements. There is no addendum with respect to this meeting. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? There being none, Councillor Butler, I believe you have the first resolution which deals with minutes of a special council and committee meeting of January the 8th.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dubenau that council approves the special council and committee meeting minutes of January 8th, 2019.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? That is carried. That takes us then to the consideration of bylaws, and Councillor Noyes, you have the resolution for the bylaw package. Does anyone wish any of these bylaws removed from the package? If not, then would you proceed with first and second reading, Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Mayor. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Butler that the bylaw containing 1-2019 to amend bylaw number 33, 2017 to reestablish Communities in Bloom Committee and approve its terms of reference, and 2019 to appoint persons to various boards and committees of the town of Fort Erie is given first and second reading.
All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Those bylaws are on the floor for questions or comments. Councillor Luberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. I received an email from a gentleman concerning the Senior Citizens Advisory Committee. And the question that he had was why there was 3 people there representing the beachcombers. And I believe that when we had our meeting, we discussed that, and that was increased from 2 to 3.
I think it always was 3.
But he says that he couldn't find the bylaw where that was increased. And the second thing was he was concerned a little bit about, he was and certain members of the committee were they were under the impression, or they were told, that if you're on the committee and you reapply, that you would probably be reappointed, which I informed him that that's not necessarily true, but they were kind of disappointed. And then he asked, well, they're advertising for 3 more places, and they're wondering, why are they advertising when there were people that reapplied to be on the committee that weren't put on the committee. Now, I understand that some people, there's only so many at large, but these here, 3, and I see it here on our report, the 3 vacancies that are there, what are they for, and can these people apply for it based on whether it's at large, or can they apply for it based on the fact that they'll be with, say, a group in town?
None of these are at large. These are all related to an existing seniors group. The advertisement would have made it clear that they relate to, number 1, the Native Friendship Center, number 2, the Italo-Canadian seniors group, and number 3, the third representative from Black Creek Leisure Homes. So those are the vacancies. There are 4 members at large on this committee, and there were a number of applications, maybe 7 or 8 or maybe 9, for members at large. And the 4 that were selected were the 4 that received the most votes from councillors.
Yes, so if they were to go on their own and approach the organizations that are lacking representation, they could go under their group and apply. Is that correct?
They would have to, I would presume that those organizations would want to know that there was some nexus between the individual and their organization.
Yes, I understand that.
If there is, sure, they could. So if it's somebody that's at Black Creek Leisure Homes that had applied, and they take it up with them, sure, there's every possibility they might be recommended by that organization.
All right, thank you. All right, I'll allow some other questions.
With respect to this? Okay, well, why don't you continue on?
All right, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. And the Economic Development and Tourism Corporation. Now, we all got a letter from the EDTC's legal counsel, and it was directed at yourself, Mayor Redekop, and they had some meetings in December, and you would question why you weren't invited. And so we got the letter, everybody saw it, we all read it. And so as my 8 years as a counselor, right, I have watched and paid attention to who declares conflict of interest, right? And so yourself, you declare a conflict because you're a member of a community group. And so you have to declare your conflict. And I've watched all the other counselors do the same. Now, you became a member of the EDTC because you were appointed by council to be our representative. But Councillor Zanko and Councillor Butler, they were members, and they are members of the EDTC, but they were appointed by the board. And I'm just wondering why it is that they didn't declare a conflict, or if they had even looked to see if they had a conflict, if they got a legal opinion, because I don't want them to get treated the way you got treated and have the board tell them that they're not welcome to their board meetings.
So there's 3 points there.
Yes.
I'll deal with them at random, but the first, beg your pardon? Yeah, okay, so the first one deals with me declaring a conflict if I'm a member of a service club. I do if there's money that's involved that would be going to the service club. But as an example, this evening, the Lions are on the agenda for a delegation. They're going to be giving money to the town of Fort Erie. I won't be declaring a pecuniary interest with respect to that because it's not something that they're receiving as a benefit that other organizations aren't receiving. So it depends on the situation. I don't always declare a conflict. I don't declare a conflict with respect to the Ridgeway BIA, of which my law practice is a member, but we're a member in common with all other businesses located. So I don't really consider that to be a conflict. The second point is that whether there's a conflict of interest, a pecuniary interest, or a perceived conflict of interest, that's really for the individual to make that declaration. It's not for others to determine whether or not there is a conflict or there isn't a conflict. So that's up to the members. You've mentioned 2 specific members. You've raised a point. That's up to them. I don't know whether they're members. I happen to be a member of the EDTC because my understanding is that the membership, which is quite restrictive, is extended to individuals who were members of the board in the past through appointment by this council, and or I think maybe Chamber of Commerce presidents have been extended membership. It's a very convoluted process, and it's one of the areas that I believe would need to be cleared up and clarified as we go forward in terms of the EDTC. I've mentioned before that I think there are a number of issues relative to their governance that need to be addressed. So I didn't declare a conflict. I don't know whether other members would declare a conflict. I didn't see one. The third point that you raised had to do with the letter that we received from the lawyer for the EDC alleging that both Councillor McDermott and I, as municipal appointees to that board, had a conflict of interest because we weren't able to carry out our fiduciary duties as directors of the corporation. Hence, they didn't invite us to executive committee meetings and tried to, in my view, keep information from Councillor McDermott and me. However, I did respond to the lawyer's letter and told him that I don't agree with his position. Our lawyer, the municipal lawyer, gave some background information as to why we wouldn't have a conflict being the municipal appointees. So in terms of this particular matter, as I said, it's up to individuals to declare a conflict if they believe they have one. If someone in the community takes issue with that, then there are remedies under the municipal conflict of interest legislation.
Yes, well, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. But I think the biggest point that I'm trying to make is I want to know from the EDTC, right? Are they going to treat our two representatives that we appointed the same way they treated you and Councillor McDermott? Because that's their position, that you had a conflict and you had a fiduciary duty to their organization. Now, Councillor Butler and Councillor Zanko were members of the EDTC before they became our council representatives. And I don't want them to be told, well, you're not going to be invited to our meeting next week because we don't think you're going to look out for our best interest. And I don't think that's right. And we need some clarification from their lawyer and their board that they're going to be welcome and they're going to be brought into every single meeting that the EDTC has.
I don't anticipate that that's going to be a problem going forward, but it's one of the things that we do need to address when we deal with modifications to the agreement that we have with the EDTC going forward. And it should be clearly spelled out that a council appointee has an obligation not only to the EDTC, but also to the taxpayers of the municipality as a member of council. So I think they're good points that you've raised, and they're points that really go to the governance aspect of the EDTC and something that we should be addressing as a council.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. But again, my request is I would like to hear from the EDTC. I understand what you're saying, that you don't anticipate that there's going to be a problem, but I would prefer to hear that from the EDTC and their legal counsel.
Okay, Mr. Cookett, maybe you could follow that up with the chair of the EDTC board.
Excuse me, I certainly will, but I would suggest as well when the two new councillors join the board that be a question to the board and the GM at the time as well.
Fair enough. And there's a meeting, you said, this week. Yeah, okay. Councillor Butler, you were next. I think you had your hand up, didn't you?
I did. Thank you. Just for point of clarification, though, I did resign as a member of the EDTC, so there wouldn't be a conflict of interest, just that you know that. I wanted you to have that information a while ago. So, but
thank you, but I called the EDTC for the list
excuse
and they
me,
gave it, so
excuse
it's
me,
current.
excuse me, you don't have the floor. Councillor Butler has the floor. She gave a clarification to you. Councillor Butler.
Thank you. I was just going to comment further with respect to the vacancies, and I wanted to just have it noted for the future that when they advertised for the Affordability and the Health Committee, there were applicants that applied thinking that there was room on those committees, but in fact there wasn't. So for the community at large positions, and I just wonder if maybe in the future that advertisement could be stated if we run into the same situation where a board was appointed prior to the end of the term of council and then brought over, because I received a couple of questions with respect to that as well.
Madam Clerk.
I believe that situation was the CAO had made a decision concerning those two boards because they were brand new, and that all they had to do was to indicate their wish to continue to be on the committee. So I'm not quite sure.
So I apologize. I'll be a little bit clearer with the new.
About?
Those two in particular were new applicants had
That's
applied
right.
for it, and over and above the ones that are already there.
Right, right. So they were recently appointed, the old committees were appointed near the end of the last term. And yeah, so in the future, that could be clear if there's advertisements that are put out. That's your request.
That there weren't room for the community.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Any other questions? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. I just wanted to comment that how impressed I was with the number of applicants we did have for the various committees, the enthusiasm in their written response of why they wanted to sit on, and the quality of their qualifications and their training was really was high. It's great to see such volunteer efforts in our town that we're definitely going to be benefiting from their knowledge.
Well, and in fact, we even had to expand the size of one committee that we started off with a very small number of applicants, and then they just blossomed. It was like they bloomed.
That's funny. That's hysterical.
Okay, Councillor Zanko, third and final reading, please. Resolution number 3.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McDermott, that bylaws 1-2019, 2-2019 are given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and the clerk under the corporate seal.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed? That is carried. Councillor Lubert, you have the next resolution regarding the confirmatory bylaw. Resolution number 4.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Moved by myself and seconded by Councilor McDermott that bylaw number 3-2019 to confirm the actions of council at its special meetings held on January 8th and January 22nd, 2019 is given first and second reading.
Actually, January 21st. That's today's meeting.
Yes, January 21st. What did I say?
22nd.
Oh, all right.
You're moving into the
Did
future.
we have a meeting on the
You're much too fast. Okay, all those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. And Councillor McDermott, you have third and final reading for that bylaw?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Zanko, that bylaw number 3-2019 is given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and clerk under the corporate seal.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. And Councillor Dubineau, I understand you have the resolution to adjourn that meeting.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Noyes, that council adjourns at 6:48 p.m. to reconvene into a regular meeting of council on January 21st, 2019.
All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. And that gets us then to the regular council meeting this evening, which I will call to order. Would you all please rise for the invocation?
We meet to serve our community and endeavor to be worthy custodians of all that has been entrusted to us. Let us be concerned only for what will promote good government. May we bring to our council chamber minds that think and hearts that feel, so that in our deliberations we may display imagination, wisdom, and courage, and the will to do our work for the good of all.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Before we go further, I should have mentioned at the very beginning that this meeting is being held on lands that are the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Mississaugas of the New Credit, and the Anishinaabe people. And these lands are the subject of the Mississaugas Treaty at Niagara of 1781 and the Between the Lakes Treaty number 3 of 1792. Madam Clerk, the roll call.
All members of council are present, Your Worship.
Again, there are no announcements or addendum. There's no addendum to this meeting. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? There being none, I'll just go over the notices of the upcoming public meetings. The 2019 budget meeting schedule continues on Wednesday, January the 23rd. Actually, it starts Wednesday, January the 23rd. That's with the water and wastewater operating budget and user fees. The Second meeting is Wednesday, February the 6th. That's the capital budget and forecast. Third meeting, February the 20th, 2019, where we will receive the library and the EDTC budgets. Fourth meeting will be the general levy, operating budget, and assessment analysis on March the 5th, 2019. And if required, there will be a meeting Wednesday, March the 20th, 2019. All meetings are held here in the council chambers. They commence at 6 p.m. And if all things go according to Hoyle, we will be adopting the budget bylaws as follows. February the 11th, 2019, water and wastewater budget and rates. Monday, February the 25th, 2019, the preliminary capital budget. Monday, March the 25th, 2019, the general levy and general capital budget. And Monday, April the 8th, 2019, the general levy and general capital budget. And again, that will be at the council meetings that commence at 6 p.m. here in the council chamber. There is a proposed increase in building permit fees meeting Monday, February the 4th, here at the council chambers, and the meeting starts at 6 p.m. There are several public meetings under the Planning Act. The first relates to the draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendments regarding 613 Helena Street. That will be held Monday, February the 4th, 2019, here in the council chambers at 6 p.m. An official plan and zoning bylaw amendment public meeting relative to 615 Burley Road North. Again, Monday, February the 4th, starting at 6 p.m. here in the council chambers. And the official plan and zoning bylaw amendments for 2651 Nye Road, again, February 4th, 2019 at 6 p.m. here in the council chambers. The reports for each of those public meetings under the Planning Act will be available on our website on January the 30th, 2019. That takes us into the regional councilor's report. It's so nice to see you here, Councillor Insina, and I don't know if you have anything to report to council this evening. This is the time when we do allow the regional council an opportunity to bring us up to date on things that are happening at the region.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. I did prepare a little report, one of many that I hope to bring at the council meetings.
You know you have a 10-minute limit.
That throws a little bit cramp into it, but I'll try and squeeze it in.
Speak quickly, or do less stuff.
As you're aware, this December I was sworn as regional councillor for Fort Erie. I am now a member of the Public Works Committee, the Public Health and Social Services Committee, a member of the board for Niagara Regional Housing, and a temporary member of the board for the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority. I do, however, Mr. Mayor, apologize. You are on the economic development?
At the region?
Yes.
I don't think so.
Or the planning?
I'm on planning and I'm on corporate services.
Yes.
And I'm on the audit committee.
Thus far, I have attended 2 meetings of the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority. I will say that I am pleased in the direction that the new board is moving. Unfortunately, I am unable to expand on the council what has been transpired, but suffice it to say that the board is moving in a more open, transparent, and efficient way of doing business. I am on the selection committee for the next CAO for the NPCA, and it's hoped that this process will begin in the next week or 2. Prior to my departure from the NPCA and making room for Ms. Fior, I would like to ensure that all the governance matters are resolved and that the authority is functioning as it should. Whether this takes 3 months or as directed by regional council, or 6 months if an extension is requested. There are many questions that remain unanswered, and it's only a matter of time that we have answers for this council and for the people of the Niagara region. As you're aware, the region is in a very precarious position now as it deals with water and wastewater issues. The infrastructure now in place needs repair and updating. In order to do this, revenue must be generated to repair the many problems now coming to light with the system. There are several issues right here in Fort Erie that are going to be addressed. I believe one is the Central Avenue trunk the other the Black Creek Lagoon. It is unfortunate that the previous council did not prepare for this and take steps to mitigate the rates that we'll be seeing coming forward. The region is now going through the budget process, as town council is also. I've attended several workshops and meetings regarding this, and hope that we can keep any increase at a minimum. As was explained to me regarding capital expenditures, it was quite humorous, as they put it. If all the roofs of the houses are all built at the same time, let's say 1970, and it only stands to reason that years down the road, if nothing has been done to them and nothing has been repaired, that there comes a point in time where all the roofs are going to need shingles. Well, all the roofs now need shingles when it comes to our wastewater and water. So that's the predicament that we are in now at the region. As we go through, I will keep everybody informed here as to the budget process as we move along. You're going to have a presentation today with regards to waste collection. I would ask you to take a look at the numbers and see for yourself if they really do reflect those of the town of Fort Erie. I have been in contact with many people. I have been called numerous times, stopped on the road, people pulling behind me and talk to me about waste collection and what they believe is happening. Know that I currently was not in favor of the process that was put forward, and I did vote against it because I felt it reflected what I had heard from the people of Fort Erie, and that's why I did that. I attended the Fort Erie Housing Coalition meeting here in Fort Erie last week. These are a group of people representing various organizations throughout Fort Erie, all interested and concerned about affordable housing in our community. They are involved in many different aspects with the region and the town, and in search of avenues and ways making affordable housing for all. Should anyone wish to get involved with this group, they can contact Martha Mason at the Fort Erie Multicultural Center. The group, I believe, is going to meet quarterly. And they do have various people from throughout the region and Fort Erie on this group. As the budget week continues this week, there is an NPCA meeting on Wednesday, but unfortunately I am not going to be able to make it. And if anybody has any questions, concerns, please fire away. I'm not sure if I have the answer, but if I don't, I will get them for you. And hopefully I haven't gone over 10 minutes. And Mr. Mayor, if you can.
You haven't. You've gone only 6 minutes, and part of your presence here is to allow councillors to ask questions if they have any. So do any members of council have any questions? Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Mayor, through Councillor Insignia. Thank you for your presentation, and thank you for representing us on the region. You mentioned the Black Creek Lagoon. I don't know what I don't know, so this is the first I've heard that it's rising to the surface, no pun intended. But could you please, when allowed, forward me any information on that as it moves forward, and what the discussion is and what the plans for that are?
I believe, yeah, that's no problem. I believe that it's going to be dredged. I will send everything to you.
Anything further? And yet, Councillor Dubineau.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Councillor Insignia. First of all, congratulations on your election. Thank you very much for representing us at the region and being here tonight. I just want to express that I've been cornered by people in a very similar way regarding the changes to waste collection, and I just want to thank you for conveying the concerns that I've also had conveyed to me within the community regarding the changes. And I just want to thank you for that, and I hope going forward that you'll continue to bring these concerns from residents to the region. Thank you.
Any other councilors? Councilor Luberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop, and Councilor Encina, thank you very much. I just got a question on when you were talking about the affordable housing, and that we all know that affordable housing is something that the region would take care of, but we have an affordable housing committee, and I'm not too sure that when we had our selection that we, and I don't know if we can, but we didn't put anybody on there to represent us at the region's level. And I'm wondering if that would be possible, that we could have somebody, I don't know if we could do it here, but somebody from our affordable housing committee that we just approved, if somebody from there would like to be a regional liaison, maybe.
We have representation from the region.
We have that? I don't see that here.
I don't have it in front of me, but we do have people from the region that come to our affordable housing meetings. And we also have people from other municipalities.
Yes, they're from the region coming to us. And I'm wondering if there would be somebody in the community that would like to go to the meetings at the region.
Well, we would have to have, that would be something that the region would have to determine, and maybe Councilor Encina can look into that.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if we could throw that around a little bit.
Sure. So Councilor Encina, you'll look into that and let us know?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Anything further, Councilor Luberts? Any other councilors? Thank you very much, Councilor Encina, and you're, of course, welcome to stay for the balance of the evening if you wish, but if you decide you need to leave earlier, that's fine as well. We'll try to get you out of here before 11:30. So that takes us then to presentations and delegations. And speaking of regional waste management, we have Catherine Habermel and Brad Whitelaw here this evening to make a presentation to us. And we also have a report on our agenda later on. Our staff is much more sympathetic, Ms. Habermel, to your views. Good evening. They're on.
Okay, perfect.
Live.
Pardon me?
You're live.
I'm live, okay. So good evening, Mayor and members of council, town staff, and member of the public. Thank you for the opportunity this evening to present to you the proposed collection service options for the next region's waste collection contract. We have a number of slides to go through. I'm going to go through quickly. In respect of your 10-minute timeline, they are in your package for your reference, and of course we'd be pleased to answer any questions that you have after the presentation. So just a little bit of background to provide some context. The Niagara Region's next waste collection contract will not commence until 2021. As part of this process, we are consulting and various stakeholders, including municipal councils. We did take a report to our Public Works Committee on January the 8th, which the options were proposed and presented to that committee. There were some changes, and I'll talk some amendments, and I will talk to those amendments through my presentation. The report also, the minutes of that committee went to council last Thursday. At that meeting, we were directed by council members to consult further with the Accessibility Advisory Committee, so we're currently doing that as well. And we're still hoping to take back a report after consultation with all the local area municipalities in March. So in terms of the reasons why we looked at the options and some of the principles that we used. We want to increase participation in the region's diversion programs. We wanted to look at potential cost avoidance. We also have some data that we collected over the last few years in terms of undertaking audits, which reflect actually the usage of the services at the curb. And we looked at 13 comparative municipalities. We also want to improve program communication to the residents and the businesses, as well as we want to standardize garbage container limits particularly for the industrial, commercial, and institutional and mixed-use properties. So going into the options, the first option is every other week garbage collection for residential sector, IC&I, and the mixed-use properties located outside the DBA as a base service. And when I talk about base, I'm referencing services that are provided consistently across the region. So what services we provide in Fort Erie, we're providing in St. Catharines. Under this scenario, I want to make it clear that we would continue collecting recycling organics, the green bin, weekly, and that garbage container limits would double for all properties. We also looked at mandatory use of clear bags with the option of an OPEG bag inside the clear bag for all sectors, both inside and outside the DBA. We did not recommend this as part of our January 8th report to Public Works Committee. However, we were directed to include this back into the options to seek pricing through the RFP process. So in terms of looking at every other week in clear bags, there is some benefits. We know that it will increase the diversion rate. We've seen this in other municipalities, and I'll speak a little bit more to that in the next slide. But I wanted to point out this graphic. I think this graphic says a lot. That right now in Niagara, on average, residents are putting out 1 garbage bag per pickup. In that garbage bag, 50% of the material is still organic material, and 14% is still recyclables. 64% of the bag or can be managed through other programs such as the Blue and Gray Box program and the Green Bin program. We also know in the IC&I and mixed use properties are underutilizing the diversion programs as well. So when we look at other municipalities who have implemented every other week, Toronto, Barrie, Durham, Peel, there's a number of them across the province, Halton region. They've seen increased diversion rates anywhere from 6% in Peel to 16% in Durham. And there's been contract savings anywhere ranging from $200 annually in Barrie to $12 million in Peel. I can tell you Waterloo, the region of Waterloo is the most recent region that's implemented every other week, and they've seen a savings of around $1.5 million annually. Moving on to the third option that we're looking at is limiting the amount of large household items that a resident can put out per pickup. And I want to stress that it's per pickup. So you can book this week and you can book next week, but each week you put out 4. Our data tells us that most people don't put out more than 4, so we don't see this as a huge impact to residents. We also recommended discontinuing appliances and scrap metal collection from low-density residential properties, being single-family to up to 6 units. Again, when we look at the data, only 6% of properties are using this service. We know that the tonnage has decreased significantly since 2007. And our haulers are telling us when they get, or collectors are telling us when they get to these properties, the 6%, that a lot of times this material has been picked up by someone else. Residents do have other options. They can drop it off for free at our drop-off depot, or they can call someone to pick it up. Or in some cases, if you buy a new fridge, the retailer will take your old fridge back. So looking at the industrial, commercial, institutional, and mixed-use properties, we're recommending that we look at reducing the garbage container limits per pickup from 7 to 4 per property, and changing mixed-use properties located outside the DBA from 6 to 4. And this really is to align with what's currently happening outside the DBA for the industrial and commercial and institutional properties. They're currently getting 4 bags or cans per pickup.
Did you mention that DBA is designated business area?
Sorry, designated business areas, yes. There's a lot of acronyms in waste management. I apologize for that. So we also know when we look at our data that on average, these properties are putting out around 2 bags or cans per pickup. So just for your information, there's DBA's downtown business or designated business areas. There's Bridgeburg that we currently service, Crystal Beach, and Ridgeway. So there's a lot of numbers here. I won't go through all these numbers. What I want to point out is that when we look at inside the Fort Erie DBAs, and we look at the industrial, commercial, institutional properties, we can see the first number there that's circled in red, 1.6. That's the number of garbage containers that are currently being put out per pickup. And the organics program is only being used by 11% of the properties. Moving to the mixed-use properties inside downtown business areas, again, the numbers don't change too much, 2.6, 2.5 cans or bags per pickup of garbage. Only 16% of the properties are using the organics program. And then again, looking outside of mixed use, 1.7 and 23% are using organic bins. My point with these slides is that the businesses aren't currently using the number of bags that they currently get. They're not reaching that limit. And we can see by the numbers that there's several properties that are not fully utilizing the diversion programs, mainly the organics or the green bin program. So there's opportunity there to divert. So I talked about base. There's also enhanced services, and these are services that go beyond the base service, whether it's additional collection in a downtown area, front-end garbage collection. These are services are requested by the local municipalities and are paid by the local municipalities. In Fort Erie, your costs are around $18,000, which represents 1% of your waste management charges. And there's just a list of your services right now. So it's public space and litter bin pickup. So I'm going to hand it over to Brad now, who is the lead on the consultation process for this file.
Thanks, Catherine. And as I say, all of these information is in the slides, so I'm not going to go through each one of them in great detail here. As far as the stakeholder consultation, there was various groups that we did consult with, the municipalities themselves. As soon as the report was approved last April, we started reaching out to the municipalities, and that's going to wrap up in February. We also met with organizations representing the businesses, so that's everybody from your business improvement associations, the chambers of commerce, tourism, Niagara Economic Development, Industrial Association, every one of those we've met with. So again, this is just more information on the details of that consultation that we did. As well as stakeholders were the residents and the businesses themselves. We started that consultation in October and wrapped that up in November into December. That included everything from public open houses and community booths to the surveys themselves. With regarding to the surveys, we did two sets of surveys. We did online surveys, and we also did random telephone surveys of low-density residential households across Niagara region. And the information there is basically on the results that we have. For choice, some of the choices that were there were things on clear bags versus every other week. The next two slides I'm going to show are what we saw at the regional level and then what we saw at the town of Fort Erie level. With regards to their preferences for clear bag every other week or both or neither. And then we looked at the specific proposed options that Catherine had talked about a bit earlier there. With regards to every other week collection, what we found across Niagara region itself was it's pretty much split right down the middle as whether residents were in favor or opposed to every other week garbage collection. With clear bags, it was a little bit less supportive of clear bag, and which is, as Catherine mentioned, why we did not, going into the report, recommend it. The 4-item limit for large item collection and scrap metal was well supported by both residents excuse me, on the online survey and the telephone surveys. We also did the consultation with the businesses. The businesses had online surveys. We reached out to them with letters to try to get them to support that. We didn't get a lot of responses from them, but of those, there was, again, the same sentiment about clear bags and the container limits. They felt that there was some support, but not overwhelming. Same thing with the mixed-use properties when we were looking at them for going down from 6 to 4. There was some support for that as well. Some of the other potential collection changes that we're looking at for the next contract, we didn't go out to consultation because these are more service enhancements or service changes, is providing an additional 4 weeks of dedicated leaf and yard waste and brush collection in the spring and fall seasons in the urban areas, as well as the current restriction that we have on regional curbside collection for those IC&I properties outside DBA. So if they have private garbage collection, currently they're not eligible to use the region's collection service. We're looking at proposing to eliminate that restriction. However, in order to do that, they must be participating in the region's diversion program, so the recycling and the organics to qualify.
Excuse me, Mr. Whitelaw, how much longer do you anticipate you'll be?
It will be another 1 minute.
Okay,
and then
let's
we'll
have a motion to extend the time. Councillor Noyes, Councillor Dubineau, all of those in favor? Please carry on.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And then the third additional option we're looking at is provision of enhanced large item collection. For right now, multi-residential and mixed-use properties aren't eligible for that. That's just for low-density residential. That's up to 6 units. So that's the proposal, would be at the discretion, again, of the local area municipality. As we mentioned, we're looking at, for each one of the local area municipalities, we want your comments and positions on this proposed base collection service options, verification whether you want the region to provide enhanced large item collection service for the multi-residential mixed use, as well as if the municipality is interested in providing a per stop price for in-ground public space or litter bin collection services at all IC&I and multi-residential properties as an enhanced service. At that point in time, we'll entertain questions you may have.
Thank you. Any members of council have any questions? I'll start with Councillor Noyes, then I'll go to Butler, then Dubineau and Ruberts.
Thank you for your presentation. One of my questions regards appliances. Would the television be considered an appliance, or would it be considered one of the large items that you could put on the curbside?
Television is not a appliance, electronic. We don't collect them right now. Large items are things like couches, tables, and that sort. So appliances would be anything like your white goods, your fridges, stoves, dishwasher, washer, dryer, that's that type of thing, the appliances, and then scrap metal.
What do people do that have a television that no longer works?
For the thing? Okay, go ahead.
Through the mayor, currently people either drive them to our depots or they call someone to pick it up. Usually if it's put out the curb, it's taken by someone.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. I'm using this term lightly, garbage police, and I think that's what's going to be the penalty for those people who are not, let's say, participating as they should in the garbage guidelines. In other words, they're not recycling as they should. What's to prevent them then? I think I read somewhere in the report that basically they would no longer have garbage, that the people would just leave it there. They just wouldn't pick it up. They'd say, okay, you know, I can see that stuff should be in the recycling bin and it's not, so we're not picking up your bag. And they're just leaving it there. What prevents them, from that individual, from getting a bit of an attitude and just saying, okay, I'll just drive it a mile down the road and throw it in the ditch? Like, how do we prevent that from happening?
So through the mayor, we know, and talking to the other municipalities who implemented every other week garbage collection, as well as some of the services that we've made over the years, that you will see a bit of an increase of illegal dumping, and then it typically goes back down to where it was. So I think the reaction is that residents feel they cannot change or make that change, and so they just dump it somewhere. But I think once they realize, and what we're hearing from other municipalities, is it's easy to participate in the diversion programs, that residents will start participating.
Councillor Noyes?
If I can continue, during that interim where people have not kind of found religion and decide they're going to do it the right way, who's going to be picking it up on the roadside dumping, if it increases?
So through the mayor, right now the region leads a legal dumping working group. So we work very closely with the 12 area municipalities, as well as other organizations like Crime Stoppers, the St. Lawrence Seaway, where we actually offer an award if someone calls in an illegal dump, and we actually can determine who it is and prosecute them, or if we get the dumper to go back and clean it up. So we are making, we have an initiative where I feel that we've seen and decrease in illegal dumping. We've actually seen an increase in the number of people that we find and locate. So we would work with the area municipalities. The region has staff that go out onto regional roads and collect the material. Our waste management bylaw staff will open bags and go through them. So if we get a call from the town, we'll actually go through the bag. Our staff will go through them and try to find identifying sources, and then we will then pursue those the evidence either through the court or, or through a warning letter.
One last question, and I know you kind of referred to it about the green bag, the clear bags and the opaque bags. I think I heard it on the radio yesterday, that the region is going back to the opaque bags, not to the clear bags. Am I correct on that, or is that just still something that's being tossed around?
Through the mayor, one of the options is to go to a clear bag program where you're allowed one opaque bag inside that clear bag. So that's one of the options that we are proposing to put into the next collection RFP.
So in other words, we put things in the opaque bag that you can't see, and then we then put that opaque bag into a clear bag.
That's right.
Yeah,
I
so
don't get the logic.
So through the mayor, the opaque bag is for probably more private items, hygiene products, etc.
Okay, so.
Councillor Noyes, questions through the chair.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yes, Mayor Redekop, through you to the delegation. So basically what someone could do is just basically put everything in the opaque bag, put it in a clear bag, and just do what they're going to do.
Through the mayor, so I should further explain that it would be the opaque bag would be a size of a grocery bag. So you couldn't take a large bag, opaque bag and put it inside the large clear bag. So the limit would be a grocery bag size.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Catherine, or yourself, actually. I just would like some clarification with respect to the downtown cores. And you mentioned that you had some consultation with the local BIAs here in the municipality August and September of 2018. Well, I'm surprised that they didn't have some objections to this, because you're going from 7 to 4 bags. And also, currently, you are 2 times weekly. How is that going to be affected?
Okay. Sorry, just if you slide back to that. The consultation that we did have, we invited all 3 of the BIAs. Only Ridgeway did attend the meeting there. The Crystal Beach and the Bridgeburg BIA reps did not attend that meeting. We still reached out to them to obtain their formal comment. Unfortunately, we did not receive any formal comment back from them. So the comments that we received were based on all the comments we received from the various BIAs, or what we refer to as the organizations representing businesses. Unfortunately, Ridgeway didn't also provide us with formal comments either on the proposed options.
It doesn't surprise me but that they showed up for it, because they're very eager people. But my question goes back to then, they are currently on 2 days a week collection, and they have a hard time keeping up with that. So what will be the effect going forward if it goes to an every other week scenario?
So through the mayor to the councillor, the every other week garbage collection would only be for properties outside any designated business area. So designated business areas would continue to receive weekly garbage collection.
Through you, Your Worship, if I may. Sure. I have just a couple of more questions then. With respect to short-term rentals within the municipalities, how are they going to be affected by this? Because if they have renters for a full week and they're keeping garbage, that becomes problematic for neighbors as well. So how will that be handled?
Through the mayor, so the intention of every other week garbage collection is to get the organic material out of the bag. So really the yucky, stinky stuff, essentially, and that would be collected weekly.
Okay. That's on I guess, a very positive way of thinking, but if that's not the case, then how do we handle that going forward? That's a concern. And then, Your Worship, I have another question for these individuals. With respect to the region having had waste collection under their umbrella and housing it themselves as opposed to contracting out, is that an option? Because you would have a considerable amount of savings at that point of probably $2 million, if not more.
Through the mayor, so staff are currently looking at a cost-benefit analysis of bringing all or some of that service in-house. We've been requested by another municipality, and I know another motion is coming forward from the city of St. Catharines as well.
Thank you. I think that I would be looking at that motion here locally as well, because I know that there are some cost benefits for all the residents if you were to bring it in-house. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dubino.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and through you, I have a few questions just regarding the actual cost, and then also a question about the program, if I may. So during your presentation, you had mentioned that the cost savings by going to 2-week collection vary. I think you said Barrie was $200,000 a year and Peel was several million. Now, do they do weekly collection for recycling and organics, or do they do 2-week? How does that work? Are they similar to what we're being proposed, or are there any differences?
Through the mayor to the councillor, they're similar. They would be the same to what we're proposing.
So they do weekly garbage collection, each one of those municipalities do, and weekly organic collection, and then they do garbage every 2 weeks?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. And through you, Your Worship, I get the idea of diversion, and you know, it's a noble goal, you know, to try and get garbage out of landfills. But ultimately, what it comes down to for taxpayers is what's this going to cost. So I'm just wondering, do we have any idea yet of what the perceived cost benefit would be to, I guess, the region and through the region to the municipality for taxpayers? How much money would this save them by going to a 2-week collection?
I'll start, and I'm going to ask Brad to comment as well. So through the mayor, I'm going to answer 2 different ways. So when so the current contract was tendered in 2009, we actually asked for an option for weekly and every other week. We saw around 1.2 million annually in cost avoidance going to every other week. However, the current provider provided a price for a weekly that was much lower than even going every other week. So that's why we're still with a weekly collection service. What we're asking is to support both options going into the RFP. And I apologize if I didn't make that clear at the beginning of my presentation. So what we're going to do is put both every other week and weekly collection service into the RFP. Then we'll be able to compare apples to apples when we get the pricing back.
Councillor Dubino.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just through you to the delegation to clarify, that there is a possibility that weekly collection may end up costing less money than the bi-weekly collection that is being talked about now. Am I understanding that correctly?
Through the mayor, it is a possibility. I mean, it happened in 2009. It is uncommon for that to happen. Realistically, it should be less to go every other week than weekly, but we saw that the current provider did come in with a cheaper price to provide weekly.
Thank you. And through you, Your Worship, again, the reason I'm asking these questions, and I think it kind of goes without saying, if you know, you read social media or you talk to anyone in the community, there's a perception that that the service level being received by residents with regard to garbage collection is not the greatest. You have residents who, you know, talk about garbage not being picked up till the next day. I know myself, garbage gets left behind. It's very frustrating. So my perspective as a resident, and certainly this has been conveyed to me by my constituents in Ward 2 and across the entire town, is that it's very important that we get value for the dollars that we spend, so that if we do go into a contract, that we ensure garbage actually is picked up at the correct time, that it is picked up properly, and it's not something you have to constantly call a supervisor 4 times and have them not return your call. I can attest to that personally. Through your worship, if I can just ask one other question that's more program related going into the RFP. Has there been any consideration given to the possibility of allowing people to continue to use opaque bags even in a clear bag program, but perhaps with a garbage tag or something where you can make the decision that you do not want to use a clear bag, but there would be a user fee for it?
So through the mayor to the councillor, we did not. We have a bag tag program now. And what we're seeing is that, unfortunately, people are opting to buy those tags. We've seen the sale of those tags increase. So it's too convenient for residents to go and buy a tag and rather than divert the material. And really our goal is to divert that material from landfill when we put organics into a landfill, we create methane, we create leachate that has to be managed. There's environmental, we talked a lot about the economics of this, but there's also the environmental concerns as well.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And through you again, I understand that, and I believe it's a noble goal. But when it comes down to it, with being the service that a municipality is delivering, I ultimately think residents should have that choice. If they want to fill a garbage bag and they're paying taxes to have garbage service delivered, I understand, there's a base level program, and certainly if the region decides to go to a clear bag base level service, that's something for regional council to decide. But I do believe, me personally, that residents should have the choice. It might cost them, but if they want to have that choice to use an opaque bag, I believe that should be an option, and I hope that's something that the region will consider going forward. And I appreciate that, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Luberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. One of the questions that I had at the beginning was right here on slide 6, but I see that I just needed some clarification. That was Markham, and they changed every other week for garbage and organics? How did that work out?
Through you, Mayor, to the councillor. Markham started out with implementing every other week garbage collection. Further to that, then they implemented the clear bag, so they have both options implemented for the city of Markham. As a result of doing that, they had combined increase of 6% on every other week, and then 35% overall. The city of Markham right now is well over 80% on their diversion.
I think the question was directed at every other week organics.
Yeah, are they doing organics as well every other?
No, all the municipalities that we're talking about here all do recycling and organics on a weekly basis.
Okay,
it's just the garbage. They've also implemented the clear bag.
Just the slide's just a little confusing. That's why I just want some clarification. In slide 16, that was talking about the consultation. Now I have to admit that I was away last year. I spent some time in the hospital, so I may have missed something. But I was on the Crystal Beach BIA, and I don't remember any discussions about garbage collection in the business districts. And I'm just wondering, you sent out something to the BIA, or did you send it to the town for them to send it to the BIA? I'd like to see that correspondence.
We can provide you with that correspondence.
Yeah, okay. And when Councillor Noyes was asking about the people that say, oh, they didn't pick up my garbage, I'll just take it down the road. And then you were talking about the garbage police, I guess you would call them. Was that cost of policing this program considered or worked on when you did your cost analysis with everything else? Because I'm sure that there's going to be an increase in that cost. Was that included?
Through the mayor, I'm not sure if the other municipalities included that in their cost analysis or not, but we could follow up. I don't know about it.
Yeah, I'm sure that there will probably be some there. And I know at the end you were talking about the current provider and what options they had, in their last contract. And they came back and we saved a lot of money. But if I remember correctly, they left a lot of money on the table when you went through the RFP program. So, and we found out, over the last 4 years or so that I've been a councillor, that the garbage collection hasn't been 100% in Fort Erie. And so I know that there was some savings, but there was a lot of money left on the table by that provider.
Your question there?
And, well, I'm just wondering if you looked at that when you made your comment about saving a lot of money, you know, yeah, he saved, but did you consider the fact that he left a lot of money on the table when he submitted his tender?
Understand the question?
I think so, Mayor. Thank you. Through the Mayor, we did not look at that, and I'm not aware of the last 4 years of poor service. I am aware that the last year and a half have been a challenge for the current provider. So, again, I'm not aware of 4 years, but I know the last year has been a struggle. We are committed to working on a resolution. We have removed some routes from the current provider and provided those routes to another provider. So we are working towards resolutions. I feel that the service is much better than last January. I can tell. I didn't work over the Christmas holidays this year like I did the previous year. So to answer your question, no, we didn't take into account what they left on the table. We just looked strictly at what the cost savings were.
Okay, thank you.
Any further, Councillor Luberts?
Yes, and as far as the bags and your opaque bag and your clear bag and putting them, you know, I talked to some people about the report, and it's been on Facebook, and there's been some comments, and personally, I try to recycle as much as I can. In the beginning, it was a nuisance. It wasn't easy, but after I got into it, it became second nature. That doesn't mean I agree with what's happening here, but when you talk about taking an opaque shopping bag, putting some garbage in there, and then taking a clear garbage bag and putting that garbage in that bag and stuff, the residents that I've been talking to have told me, Donnie, I'm not an employee.
Councillor Luberts, do you have a question? Because
Yes.
this is an opportunity for you to question the
Yes.
delegates.
So my question is, why is it that you have to have a clear bag? What is it that you're looking for? Why can't we just have the opaque bag and go with that?
Through the mayor to the councillor, the intention of the clear bag is to allow the collector to see what's in the bag. If there's organic or recycling, the bag will be left behind. It really, going back to the slide, I guess the third slide about what our principles were, is to reduce the amount of material going into our landfill, cost avoidance. So when we look at, for instance, Markham, when they implemented the clear bag, there was a clear alignment between implementing that program and to the amount of material being diverted from the landfill. So it's really about diverting the recyclables and organics from the garbage bag, which 64% currently of the garbage bag is organic and recyclable material. So clear bag every other week. The intention of those programs, or those options, I should say, are to reduce the amount of that material going to landfill currently.
Okay, thank you. And if I may, now when... as
long as it's a question.
Yeah.
As long as it's a question.
Yeah. When is the region, when are you planning on bringing this to the region for implementation?
So
I see that in here.
Through the mayor, the next steps are we are currently consulting with all local area municipalities, such as we are doing tonight. We will be taking a report back to our committee in March. We are only asking that these options be included in the RFP to obtain pricing, and then we would take those prices back to our council probably latter part of this year, early next year.
Okay, all right, thank you. Because looking at your slides, and I appreciate you coming forward and reaching out to our staff, but I would like to see that you provide a little bit more opportunity for the public to comment. I don't know that it was brought forward that well over the last year for public consultation, and I'm wondering if it's possible that you could do another short little campaign to notify the residents and get some better public input.
Through the mayor, we did undertake an extensive public consultation. We received over 6,600 survey responses. That's the largest amount of survey responses that the region has ever received on any survey. We did also do phone surveys. We were in all 12 area municipalities with community booths and open houses. So there was an extensive consultation done for this, for these options.
Anything further,
Thank you
Councillor
very
Edwards?
much, Mayor Redekop, but, and thank you very much, I appreciate that, but like I said, as a BIA member, I didn't see anything, and just my own personal opinion, I don't know. Talking to my residents, a lot of residents are asking me, what's this all about? When did this start? So that's why I'm asking. I think that we need a little bit more.
So
Councillor Zanko.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the delegates. I know you had mentioned that you, through your survey, it was a 50-50 split. And I can say I'm clearly speaking to residents that are on this side that are really not in favor of this. But some of the concerns that I had was more so driven during the summer months and concerns of increased rodents. You can't mandate people to use organics unless you're married to my husband, I must say. So some of the concern is we have a lot of seasonal residents. They're going to dispose of that yucky stuff that you referred to in a regular garbage bag. They're going to leave and perhaps not come back. Everybody sees rodents going into garbage. It's very common to see garbage on the side of the road that rodents had obviously wrecked the bag. Who's going to be responsible for cleaning that mess up if the residents are nowhere to be found or if residents choose not to? Or I guess my question is, have you considered that?
So through the mayor, currently we deal with these issues, whether it's seasonal or we have a lot of off-campus student housing. We typically contact the landlord and we have them address the issue. And we've been successful with those contacts. So we have a list of property owners. We make those contacts. We have them deal with the issue. If they can't, then we will pick it up. But it's flagged, and then we try to make the property owner responsible for the material that's generated, whether you're a landlord or an owner of the property or living at the property.
Thank you, and through you, Your Worship. So is there a particular time frame then that you currently have, that you work with the property owner? So in a day, if the rotten garbage isn't picked up, would the region at that point have a certain time frame that they would go and retrieve that?
Through the mayor, so it's not, it's in compliance with our bylaw from 7 a.m. till 7 a.m. till 5 at night, I believe. And then after that time, the material's out of compliance. It doesn't meet our bylaw set out times. So we can't do anything between those hours because typically it's set out, it meets the timelines. And so it's after that time that we'll deal with it. So we'll make contact the next day typically with the owner.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? We'll go to Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to follow up with respect to timing, if the municipalities wanted to see it be brought in and you're working on a report, how is that going to affect the timing?
Through the mayor, so we're finishing up our presentations to local municipalities probably by early to mid-February. We're allowing till February 20th for comments back from the local municipalities. So this is our 4th presentation. We have 1 tomorrow, 3 next week. So we're hoping that we can meet that timeline.
For clarification, I apologize, Your Worship. So if we get you our response and we'd like to see a report with respect to that being brought in, I'm wondering what the timing of implementation afterwards would be. You mentioned an RFP. You wanted to get that out by?
So through the mayor, we're hoping to issue that by early Q4 of this year.
Right. And so how would then that be affected if the municipalities are looking to have a report from you to having that be brought in back to the region as opposed to sent out externally on a contract basis? So you would need an
so through the mayor, sorry, you're talking about the having in-house, sorry, I understand.
Yes.
Okay.
So if the municipalities are agreed upon that, we'd like to see it be brought in and handled internally by the region as opposed to contracted out, you wouldn't need an RFP. So how would that be affected?
So through the mayor, we would probably look at a more of a hybrid model where we would contract some areas out and bring some in-house. But we're running those scenarios right now, and we'll be bringing a report back either March or April to regional council. When we look at other municipalities such as City of Toronto, City of Hamilton, Ottawa, they have a hybrid model where some areas are done by a contractor and other areas are done by in-house crew.
So, and I apologize, one more question to clarify that then. If you're going to bring that to regional council, that discussion really comes, trying to put this diplomatically, that discussion then is taken away from the municipalities and we just have to rely on our representative from the region, correct?
We have 2 representatives at the region, but this is a regional jurisdiction. So they have to make that decision. But the residents are also represented at the region. We represent the residents, so does the region. So those are decisions that would be made, though, at the regional level with presumably input from the municipalities and the residents. They can directly appeal. Beg pardon? We don't typically get regional reports, but I pass them on. I passed on the initial report. Excuse me, and I'd be quite happy to do that because I know it's an issue of concern to all of the councillors. And that's why I passed it on. So we will continue to do that. But before you're finished, just for clarification, these recommendations, these decisions go into the RFP. You go that route. But the decision to go to every other week would be based on what you get in the RFP and what regional council decides to do based on whatever input they get from the residents.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much for coming out and providing us with this information.
Thank you.
We do have a report later on in the agenda that will be dealing with this. So who knows what will happen.
Great, thank you.
Thank you very much. That takes us then to our next delegation, and that is Casey and Ruth Bruins, who are going to give us some advice with respect to Bay Beach and hopefully how we might manage it better in 2019.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I don't know if I'm that wise, but I'd like to take your mindset from the Fort Erie landfill over to Bay Beach. It's a better experience.
Big jump.
So my wife and I have lived in town, my wife her whole life, and me for the last 40 years. I won't say how long my wife is because then I'll give away her age. But we're always looking for improvement. I'm a member of Lions, she's a member of Lioness. We're always trying to help and we're trying to make things better. We're not trying to be critical, we're trying to build up, not tear down. So we want to comment on the last beach season, not to criticize, but to identify areas that require improvement to ensure that members of the public have a better experience at Bay Beach in 2019 and beyond. My wife Ruth and I have talked to hundreds of local people who were heavily impacted this summer. They also have talked to their friends and neighbors about the situation, and we've talked to them too. We all want to work together with the town staff and the council to work towards an improvement. Ruth and I invited members of the past council and staff members to come to our home at 4095 Erie Road. We abut the Ashwood entrance. We've seen it all. That fronts on the public beach to observe firsthand the areas of concern that we have identified below. No one took us up on the offer, and that's okay. We offered to come in and stop in for a coffee. So we just thought we'd collect our concerns, put them in writing so that you have something formal so you can hear from the residents on what we'd like to see. So the first thing we did was we identified the problems in the 2018 season, and in 2018, without inspections of incoming bags and materials and patrolling of the beach by a bonded security firm, laws and bylaws were violated. There's no other way to say it. My wife and I, Ruth and I, personally saw beer and liquor on the beach, large kitchen utensils and knives were on the beach. An example was a 12-inch knife with a very sharp blade was found in the sand. If somebody had been playing football and dived, or a little kid had got that would have been a big problem. Glass containers, they're all over the place. You can see Mr. Augustine collecting them at the end of the night and taking bags and bags of glass and beer containers out of there. People were smoking cigarettes, and the funny cigarettes, the marijuana, on the beach. And with this year, it being legal, that's something of concern. People brought in barbecues and they had live fires on the beach. People camped on the beach overnight. It's not a common thing, but it did happen in a few instances. Music was so loud it impacted the public enjoyment of the beach. I guess people had to turn it up because when you have 6,400 people there, you can't hear your music. With only 8 to 10 portable washrooms available for 6,400 people on peak days, the public was urinating and defecating on the beach. And I have to say, I didn't want to witness it, but I did. Extreme overcrowding, very extreme, so bad that you couldn't get anywhere on that beach. It was a real impediment to first responders trying to conduct their activities. There were no lanes of ingress or egress. I saw one lady that did have a heart attack that needed help, and that was a real problem. We can't let that happen again. So attendance, the town staff can probably tell you, especially the poor kids that were hauling all that garbage. On weekends, we had some weekends with over 6,000 people on that beach. That's almost as many people that live in Crystal Beach and Ridgeway. Think of it. There was no place for the locals. If you're a local and you want to go to that beach, there's no spot for you. There were no paths of ingress and egress for public to use for emergency for the public to walk on or emergency personnel or police to use. The police couldn't even come in with their quads. There were far too many people on that beach. So an observation on attendance, unlike other beach communities where you have extensive shorelines like Myrtle Beach or Daytona or other areas, we only have 902 feet of length in beach. And sometimes that beach is 200 feet wide, but if the water is blown one way, it can be half of that. A lot of people don't know that because they don't live there and can't see the wind blowing the water up and down. That gives us about 4 acres of beach area for people to sit on. So if you have 6,400 people there, it's quite a crowd. You can't move. And if you took just a common, I tried to look it up online, a common bylaw, which is like 100 square feet per person for a house that's built. If you apply that to that, there should only be about 1,800 people on that beach. Now, maybe it could be a little bit more because maybe the 100's not enough, but what the right number is, I don't know. But I think staff would have to look at that. So feedback from the members, community members. Ron Kruder and I will be presenting a check in a few minutes. We sat there and sold stones all summer. We talked to a lot of people. My wife and I talked to a lot of people on the beach. So they reiterated all these problems. They've seen it too. So we asked, what do you think should be done? What kind of feedback do you want to give? And it was strong, and it was very specific. People traveling from out of town need to be supported by washrooms, change rooms, picnic areas, parking, and security. We're paying for what they need. They should pay admission. Tents, tables, furniture, oversized objects like beds coming to the beach. They were actually taking beds, inflatable beds to the beach. Picnic paraphernalia, knives, kitchen utensils, and loud music should be banned by bylaw. Picnics should be held in picnic areas, not on the beach. We now have a picnic area, thanks to the good work of the council. So let's use it and restrict things. Local Sea Bay Beach is a public park. Please take heed to the word park, because it is a park, just like Sugar Bowl and some of the other parks. They walk to the beach, they go for a walk on the beach. Some like to play football and soccer. Some like to sit. Some like to watch the sunset. They don't require the washrooms, although they are handy if you happen to be there. Change rooms, picnic areas, parking, or security. Well, they may use it, but at a much less extent. Their use of those facilities would be far, far below the thousands of people from out of town. Often as they walk to the beach, they stop at local establishments. They buy dinner or ice cream. So they support the local community. The Bay Beach Park is used the same way Sugar Bowl, the boat launch, Ridgeway Lions Field, Crescent Fields are as parks. And the locals like to go to the beach, but they can't attend due to this overcrowding. It is true that we charge for use of town sports facilities for locals, but that's what they are, is specialized facilities, organized sports that require specific build and use for people involved specifically in that sport. For instance, the general public doesn't go to an ice rink as a park. They don't go have a picnic there. But Bay Beach is viewed as a public park park and not a sports facilities by us locals. Most people agree that anyone from the region shouldn't pay. And I've talked to quite a few people about this. And because the region gave us $800,000 towards that Bay Beach redevelopment. And if you live in the region, you should have ID. Children should be accompanied by parents with ID, or you could issue beach passes to children after parents have proven through their own ID that they're local residents. Summer residents' feedback is that they pay taxes to the town and should also be included. Everyone can be sent a form along with their tax bill for a season's beach pass. So that allows the people from out of town who pay and support through their taxes the beach. We also got some strongly expressed feedback on attendance. Many locals have asked why we don't restrict attendance on the finite area of the beach. And I heard that word. They said small area, defined area. And it got me thinking, and I use the word finite. That's a word I found. Other facilities and public buildings all have occupancy and attendance restrictions. So this town hall, this room must have a restriction. The Lions, at our hall, it's 300 people. So why don't we have one there? So if we charge for admission, well, you might allow a specific maximum number of daily tickets sold to at the beach to the non-locals. So that might be 1,000 or 2,000 or whatever the town feels is appropriate. Locals should always get attendance. The suggested solutions we heard from everyone have been collected and are reflected below. So we didn't want to just complain, we wanted to talk about what we thought solutions might be. So proper security that will be doing inspections and enforcing existing bylaws, and any new bylaws get passed regarding the following. And number one, tents. Tents are a real problem. If you're trying to see your kid in the water and your vision's totally blocked, it's a real safety hazard. We'd have no lifeguards there. The tent pegs, we have a friend that does the metal detecting. He's got 2 buckets of tent pegs. People have cut their feet. Ron and I were selling blocks there, and people came up to us several times, where can I go? And we had to direct them to urgent care. It's a real problem. So instead, we could be like other areas like Myrtle Beach and whatever, and I took a section of the bylaw of Myrtle Beach, I won't read it, but it's there, it's available, it clearly defines, and if you want to see a good set of beach rules, go read their rules. Just go on the web and have a look. So the second thing is picnic paraphernalia, kitchen utensils, knives, furniture, mattresses, tables, tents, and chair sets, and I mean dining room chair sets and dining rooms, things like that. These items take up an inordinate amount of space in the beach, cause hazards, and should not be allowed on the beach. The improvements at Bay Beach provide a picnic area with facilities that can be used. Pass a bylaw restricting such large articles and equipment from the beach. Allow picnics and picnic equipment in the designated picnic areas only. You may wish to restrict tent setup and table sets up in those areas also. Number 3, attendance. Restricting beach attendance is necessary. Please recognize that there is a finite size. It's like going to the that beautiful theater across the street. You can only have so many people in it. Unlike other beach communities where there are extensive shorelines with large acreages, we have only 900 running feet and 100 to 200 depending on the wind. Charge for admission, but not to locals. Locals should always be allowed access. Pass a new bylaw, only allow a specific number of tickets to be sold for admission to non-locals. 1,000 to 2,000, where most of people's thoughts were in that range, because they think probably at least 1,000 locals will be there every day. How do you define a local? They live in Fort Erie and they can show a picture ID, or they live in the region and can show a picture ID. It's really easy. An adult with a child with ID is a local.
Bruce, how much longer do you anticipate you'll be?
I'm going to be another page. I've got to finish. Another 4 minutes.
And will you be providing us with a copy of this?
I have given a copy to the clerk.
Perfect. Thank you. So let's have a motion to extend. Councillor McDermott, seconded by Councillor.
I'm sorry for taking so long.
All those in favor? No, this is very important, and I don't want to cut you off. We all want to get the benefit of your experience.
So the thought was with non-residents owning property in Fort Erie, they can get a beach pass, set it to them in their tax bill. And I put a chart which I won't read for time considerations, but there are some comparable capacity things there. And parking. Through restricting attendance levels, and this is a self-correcting problem, if you restrict attendance, you also set parking requirements. Locals and non-locals should have sufficient parking from available lots if the number of beach attendants is set. Parking problems are reduced if you would control the attendance. And security. All the bylaws that exist or might be created are ineffective if you don't have a bonded and reliable security firm there. In the past, we've had them, and we've had some that weren't reliable. But the ones that were reliable did a great job. They should do the inspections at the gate and enforce all these rules that you're going to come up with. And the gate inspections, you can stop all the illegal things, all the things we've talked about from coming in. And patrolling, as they go up and down the beach, they stop the drinking, they stop the smoking, and the smoking of the funny stuff. So, and the security can also watch the tickets and help with the input through the gate. So I thank you for your consideration of the above, and all the people that gave us all the input and all the people in Crystal Beach that we know in the area, thank you. And we really hope that you consider these, because we do want a better experience at that first-class facility that you've built for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bruins and Mrs. Bruins. Are there any members of the council that have any questions? Councillor Lubert.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. And Casey, thank you very much for coming forward. And I should let you know that we have discussions with staff, and your request will be taken into consideration. We have had the BIA, and I've asked them to submit some extra comments, Friends of Crystal Beach and different organizations, to submit some comments on what they would like. But your idea of security and bonded and reliable security, that's one thing that I definitely will be pushing for, because I totally agree, and that will be the key to controlling Bay Beach. Thank you.
Any other councillors?
Thank you, Mayor.
Just clarification on one point. I agree with your comments with respect to managing the number of people on the beach. I'm a little puzzled as to how we would be able to ensure that we get the maximum utilization of the beach on the one hand, charge admission for people who can't show a connection with the region or the town, or either live here or have property here, and still maintain a policy whereby anybody that fits within the town or the region is assured of a place.
If you don't have local ID.
No. That's not my question. My question is, let's suppose we decide 4,000 people is the maximum number of people that can be on this beach.
Right.
How do we assure people who live in Fort Erie or live in the region that they will always have a spot? How would we go about doing that?
Well, I think if you let it be known that the town thinks they're, and I don't know what you really, if you'd study it or look at it, say you think the capacity isn't my number 2, it's 3,000 people. You tell the public, we think between 500 and 1,000 locals a day will attend. So we're only going to sell 2,000 tickets to anybody that's not local. And you restrict it to that. And you have physically 2,000 tickets. And when they're gone that day, you count out 2,000 tickets. And when they're gone that day, they're gone. You no more attendance.
Okay, that's the explanation. Not sure that I agree with that, but I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I understand you're going to stick around for the next delegation.
Yep, Ron.
And we are expecting a report in February from our staff with respect to this, and I'm confident that they will be taking into account the things that you have commented on. So that takes us to the next delegation, and that's Casey Bruins and Ron Brunner.
The Ridgeway Lions Club, Your Honor.
Lions Club.
Mayor and Council, as Lions, our job is to serve. We're like you. We're on building. We're improving. We're about bringing the community up. So the Lions are here to make an announcement on the fundraising for Bay Beach to that end. Thank Council, before all the snow fell, Bay Beach, it does look fantastic. It really is. You don't realize the uplift it's giving our community. The Lions wanted to be part of that uplift. The Town Council made it possible through your renewal. It offers the public the park they deserve. And it's a park the residents want to have access to all year round. And the new facilities and playground will extend their enjoyment of the site and make it a year-round site. So we're happy to announce that the public has supported our fundraising efforts beyond what we ever thought. What we expected would take 3 years took us a year, and we did think it would take 3 years to raise $85,000. Due to the high level of public support for this project, we kept hearing that people wanted to help the kids. We kept hearing how people really are enjoying the Bay Beach redevelopment, and we kept hearing how they wanted to create a legacy. So we had very strong public support from individuals, businesses, and other service clubs. Our original goal was $85,000, but the public bought it heavily into this concept, and they wanted to help us create this legacy. They came to every event we ever held. We had talked about capacity. We had some nights that we couldn't get enough people into our hall for certain fundraisers. We sold engraved stones. We thought we'd be lucky to sell 100 square feet. We're over 200 square feet. People kept wanting to contribute and contribute. We are thinking instead of $85,000, we are actually pretty close to raising $105,000. But that wasn't the Ridgeway Lions. That was belief in what you're doing there. And the public loves this park. They want to be able to use it. And we are establishing a legacy through that park. So the past council did a motion for the $85,000. We're unsure what to do with the extra money. We want to be able to, I know a tender's gone out. We want to keep that tender. We want to honor it. But we want to be able to pick the lines, want to help. We're part of the selection committee. We want to pick maybe a couple more pieces for the kids that we couldn't quite afford in the last one. So if we can use this $20,000 towards that end, we'd love to do that. So in addition to the playground donations, our club also gave, we bought 3 benches for $4,500 because we wanted to go a little bit above and beyond. This was before we knew we were getting this other money. And we also bought 2 benches at CRCC just to say, we like what you're doing at the parks in the town. So we wanted to support you in that. So let's keep building this community up together. So lastly, we'd like to also thank the staff, Tom and Signe, very much for all their efforts. They've really tried to help us coordinate the blocks. Now we're a little bit beyond the 200 square foot area they gave us. I'm sure they'll cut a little bit of that cement so we get a few more blocks in there, but people wanted to be part of, they see this as almost like a tourist attraction, the blocks. So the town and the public have worked hard together to get the goal. This is a great first-class park. I saw in the paper where they said that we have one of the first-class beaches. Wait till they see the new facilities. So tonight we have a check for $55,000 to make up our original commitment. We'd like to get a picture, if we could, with council and with Signe and Tom and the Lions that are present tonight. We'd just like to get a picture.
Sure, that'd be fun. We can do that. On behalf of the council, congratulate all of you and thank all of the members of the Ridgeway Lions Club who have been here, and all the members of the community who helped to support you to make sure that this is a first-rate park. So why don't we all go down and grab a piece of that check.
Piece of that check. You can take her picture, Rick?
Sarah's here. Sarah's here.
You gave one to two.
You're still awake? You're still awake?
Yeah. Sure, can I do that?
Oh, that's good. Get back there.
Thank you very much.
What a pleasure.
I'd asked for small unmarked bills, but they wouldn't. Do you want us to crunch in a bit? Everybody in?
$55, and we'll get, and the other 20 will have.
The rest of the original 85.
Thank you very much.
There's gonna be another 15, 20, 30, stuff. We'll talk about that. We'll be at the meeting soon.
Take a 5-minute break, and then so we'll come back at 8:16, and we'll finish our business. We're now at the consent agenda. Are there any items that anyone wishes removed from the consent agenda? And since Councillor Luberts has the resolution for the council agenda, we'll allow him to take his seat. We're at resolution, this will be resolution number 1 for this council meeting, Councillor Luberts.
Sorry, Mayor Redekop. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McDermott that council approves the consent agenda items as recommended.
Are there any questions or comments arising out of any of the items contained in the consent agenda? Madam Clerk, I had one question, and that was the minutes of the Senior Citizens Advisory Committee made reference to, actually it was correspondence, made reference to staff support being withdrawn after the most recent election. Are you aware of that?
No, Your Worship, I wasn't.
I wonder if you might have someone in your office inquire into that and maybe get some particulars.
Certainly, Your Worship, I will do that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Noyes.
Yes, under the Community Gaming and Development Corporation, I think it's E under, oh, maybe I'm too, you brought up the seniors, so that's good. Are these all now under consent agenda, like board and committee minutes are also under?
Yes, the committee minutes are in the consent agenda.
Okay, so in that, they talked about, actually, Councillor Insignia had made a comment in regards to having a good news story in regards to the increased bingo money that's being raised through bingo now being, I think it's in the report it said 2.5 million is the anticipated growth in the industry for the dollars available. And I'm just wondering where that's going. I did have a chance to talk to Ms. Gress earlier today, and she says she is working on it, and they're trying to get the 2018 numbers down first, and then moving forward when they have that information. But that it is definitely a good news story, and that I can recall it wasn't that long ago that we were worried that we were going to collect about 750,000, and we were going to be lucky with that with the Canadian dollar and the American dollar and all that. Now we're up to 2.5. But having said that, too, there's a further thing in the minutes about providing a list of organizations in regards to how that funding is going to be spent, like the allocation of the 2.5 million. And I'd like a copy of what that list is. And I did have an opportunity of talking to Ms. Grass, and from my understanding is that basically those who are currently licensee holders are on the list, and those that aren't on the list, so to speak. And I think that in regards to transparency and an even playing field in that, I think we need to make sure that every organization that would meet the criteria is aware of the possibility of if they decide to apply for a license. I know that's a two-edged sword. You know, if you have more organizations, there's going to be, each organization is going to get less, but I do think, again, for transparency, since the money is going up to 2.5 million, we need to really educate all the organizations that may fit the criteria, that there may be an opportunity for them to apply, not just the current licensee holders.
That's an issue for the Community Gaming Corporation. We have a representative from council on that committee. He's heard what you've had to say, and I think it's fair that all organizations should be given an opportunity to submit budgets if they wish. That's the direction that you're going, and we do get their minutes on a monthly basis or whenever they have their meetings so that we can monitor that. But I don't know that it's necessary for us to have a list of who the potential applicants might be.
No, I'm not. I'm sorry, perhaps I didn't speak clearly. It's not that I want them to create the list. They have a list.
Yeah, I understand that. And you wanted a copy of the list.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think you need a copy of the list. I do believe, though, that your point about making sure that everyone who could potentially qualify is made aware of the fact that there's additional revenues so that they can apply for that.
That would meet the same purpose, yes.
Yes, and so Councillor Dumino, please take that with you to the next meeting. Are there any other questions arising out of anything in the consent agenda? If not, then I'll call Councillor Luberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Just to follow up on Councillor Noyes' discussion on the gaming. I noticed in the inquiries by members that Tom Encina, he asked if the town could put together some kind of a good news story. And I'm wondering if the staff was contacted by the Gaming Corporation, because if you're going to increase your revenues by $2.5 million, I think we should celebrate that. You know, if we won a lottery, we'd be out celebrating. And I think this is a good idea, but the problem was it wasn't brought forward as a motion. It was just an idea.
Right. No, that's a good point, and it's something that Mr. Cookett, perhaps you can follow up with the Gaming Corporation. If they need help, they can, certainly we can facilitate
even on our
that.
website or something.
That's
yeah,
right.
Just so,
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Councillor Dubineau.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship, and just, if I may, with regard through you to the comment that Councillor Noyes made, with regard to the decisions related to how permittees or potential permittees are notified, I'm certainly going to take that to the gaming board. I don't know if I'll be able to do it this meeting on Wednesday because we have a budget meeting, but I will convey that to the board. I just want to make it clear that whether that happens or not, it's ultimately going to be a decision that the board is going to make whether to do that. And I'm certainly willing to convey it. And if the board decides that they like to do that, then so be it going forward.
We're going to find that out in the minutes because you'll raise it. It should be recorded. If they act upon it, that's great. And if they don't, then we'll be able to take another run at it. Because I think it does make sense.
Absolutely, and I will.
Thank you. Sure, Councillor Luberts.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Redekop. Just to follow up on your thing with the Senior Citizens Advisory Committee, was there a staff liaison before?
Not that I'm aware of.
So they had their
We'll find
council
out.
representative though, right?
They did, and we'll find that out. We'll find out what they were referring to and
Yeah, okay, yeah, it was very
clarify it.
confusing. All right, thanks.
Okay. Can I now call the question? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. That then takes us to new business and inquiries, and we have a couple of resolutions to start off with. And Councillor Zanko, you have the next two resolutions dealing with the Fort Erie Active Transportation Committee.
Yes, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McDermott, that Council accepts the resignation of Tracy Calder-Rosatani from the Fort Erie Active Transportation Advisory Committee, and further, that Council directs staff to proceed with filling the vacancy in accordance with the bylaw.
Are there any questions or comments on that? All those in favor? Opposed, that is carried. Councillor Zanko, back to you.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McDermott, that Council accepts the resignation of Luke Teff from the Fort Erie Active Transportation Advisory Committee, and further, that Council directs staff to proceed with filling the vacancy in accordance with the bylaw.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Are there any items of new business? Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship. I wonder if you could tell me, have we ever had a report received with respect to council meeting twice a month versus 4 times a month?
Council meetings twice a month instead of 4 times a month? I don't know that we have. We have January, December, June, July, and August where we only meet twice a month.
So I wonder if we could have staff take a look at that and tell us what the pros and cons would be towards that.
You can give notice of motion if you want to pursue that.
Okay, thank you.
And that'll be the next item on the agenda. Are there any other items of new business or inquiries? Then that takes us to motions. There are no motions, but yeah, somehow there's notice of motions is missing. It's where? It's after the reports. Okay, so we're not there yet. Remind me when we get there, Councillor Butler. Okay, so then we've got a couple of reports The first one relates to Communities in Bloom, and Councillor Butler, you have the resolution regarding that.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship.
I can advise council that staff has checked with Communities in Bloom Committee, and they're supportive of the, is that correct, Ms. Hanson? They're supportive of this recommendation. Okay.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dubenow. PDS-79-2018 Fort Erie Communities in Bloom program, that the town does not participate in the 2019 National Communities in Bloom program in order to focus resources on programs that support the local community and encourage beautification at a local level, and that, subject to 2019 budget approval, the town engages the services of a Niagara College Events Management Co-op student to implement a local beautification competition and awards gala.
Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Dubenow.
Yes, Your Worship. I think it goes without saying with the response that we received in the community that I think it's best that we do proceed with the program, and for that reason, I'm not going to be supporting this. Thank you.
So, just for clarification, sorry, you do support the recommendation, or you don't support the recommendation? Not to participate in the national program, but there would be a local program this year to allow, yes, to allow the group to gather their resources and make their plan to re-enter national. Yes, okay, fair enough. Okay, any other questions or comments? All those in favor? That is carried. That takes us then to the next report, which is relative to the Niagara Solid Waste Management issue. And Councillor Noyes, you have the resolution for that.
Yes, Mayor Redekop. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dubenow, the ISO 2019 Niagara Solid Waste Management Report that Council received the Region of Niagara 2021 Waste Collection Contract, proposed options in Fort Erie Enhanced Collection Service, and further, the Council endorses the 8 recommendations included with this report.
Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Luberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. I'm a little confused as to what it is we're endorsing, because when we had the delegates up here, if I heard correctly, the lady was saying that the options are in the report, and then it's going to be up to the contractor to decide what options they're going to include in their RFP. So
no, it's
no.
No,
How's that
the region is looking for input as to what should be included in the RFP. They want to make the RFP as broad as possible so that they'll provide alternatives. And then once proposals are put in response to the RFP, then they'll make a determination as to what they're doing going forward. But these are some of the things that they want to include in the RFP, and all 8 items referred to in the resolution are listed in our report, which mirrors the region's report.
Yes, but when the firm puts in the RFP, they have to do all 8? Or are they just going to give an RFP and say, well, this is what we can do for this much money?
There will be more than likely just this 8. It sounded, in listening to the delegation, it sounded like they're going to try to make this as broad as possible. So there'll be a weekly collection, there'll be an every other week collection.
All right.
There'll be clear bags, there'll be opaque bags, there'll be, so that's my understanding. Mr. Walsh can maybe clarify that.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Were you listening?
Mr. Murray, yes.
Sure
no,
you
what you've said is correct.
Even if you weren't listening, that's a good answer.
Okay. Can you repeat that then, Mayor Redekop?
Yeah. So,
I'm only kidding.
Yeah, you're only kidding. Good.
All right. Anyway, just to further on with the report, I don't have many questions, but just a couple comments. And I, like I said earlier this evening, I do a lot of recycling myself, and I find that a lot of times there's no need for me to put a garbage bag out for regular garbage pickup, but I'm single. So I don't know if that would qualify for a growing family, right? But one thing that I did find was it was cumbersome, I guess you could call it, to get started in the recycling. But once I got started, now it becomes second nature. I don't even think of it. In fact, I had a conversation with Councillor Noyes today, and she mentioned that in some things that you find out as you're reading, and certain things go in certain places and stuff, and you're finding new things all the time. But that doesn't mean that I agree totally and every other week at this point, because I think we need a little bit more public consultation. I don't think that we got very good. I know they said they did intensive, but if it was that intensive, why is it, as a counselor, I didn't know much about this report. Now, maybe I missed a lot because of last year, and I had my health problems, but I don't know that it was around much. And I would like to see some more public consultation.
So, Mr. Walsh, how would we go about further public consultation, having regard to the timelines that the region is hoping to reach?
Mr. Mayor, obviously we don't control the region. So if you're, whatever comes out of this report, whether we endorse some, all, or none, that will get reported back to the region, and I would suppose through the clerk that you could make a motion that encourages the region somehow to undertake more public consultation.
Okay, so we could theoretically defer this for further public consultation, or a request to the region that there be further public consultation.
Well, my fear there is that they had an initial deadline of February 1st for comments from local municipalities. They've extended that to February 20th. That's only a month from now. By the time our request got to the region, I don't think that public consultation would take place, and any comments coming from this council would not be heard as effectively.
Okay. Do you have any further questions or comments, Councillor Luberts?
So I guess what I'm hearing is any consultation from the people of Fort Erie is going to happen in this room. Basically, that's where we're going to get your public consultation, is from us.
Well, there's been public consultation, and as was mentioned, there were over 6,500 responses online. There have been some open houses. It may not have been as, I mean, a lot of people, I think, see ads, if they see the ads at all. They see the region and their eyes glaze over. Not to suggest that it's not interesting, but so that may be part of the problem. But you know, when you've got 3 BIAs and one responds and the others have to be reached out to, it's an indication that, you know, people aren't paying attention. This is an important issue. It's a very important issue, and once decisions are made, then we're really going to hear about it, I'm sure, if it's decisions that people don't like. So, you know, it seems to me that if we were to say we don't agree with any of these and fire it back, that puts us in no different position than if we were to say, let's put it over and have a public meeting. We could have a public meeting. We could have people come out to a public meeting here and see how many people actually come. I have a feeling that it won't be as many as are interested in short-term rentals, but that's just me. Yeah. That's just my thinking. So we could do that. When's our next? We have a committee meeting on February the 4th, and we must have one on the 19th. So the 19th is before the 20th. Mr. Walsh, am I getting dangerously close to the 20th?
You're correct. The 19th is before the 20th.
See, you are unbelievably perceptive this evening. So, as an example, why couldn't we put this over to the 19th, Mr. Walsh, and have a public meeting on and listen to what people have to say so that we can then respond to the region with what our views are.
That meets the region's timelines, and that's fine. My concern in my previous statement was that if you sent a message up to the region that asking them to hold some more public engagement, it wouldn't be held in the proper time frame.
For them to do it.
Correct.
But we could do it.
Absolutely.
Madam Clerk, is there any reason why we couldn't? I hesitate. After last week's experience, I hesitate to suggest that we should have a public meeting. We definitely can't do it on the 4th because we've got 3 public meetings under the Planning Act. But what about the 19th? Do we have anything planned for that you're aware of? Okay, so I'm just thinking off the top of my head. It may be that all of you want to go ahead tonight. Anything further, Councillor Luberts? Councillor Zanko, I think you had your hand up, or was it Councillor Butler? I saw Councillor Butler first, and then Zanko, and then Noyes, and then Dubineau. Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple of things, just to piggyback on what was just said. I know that the region, for a fact, was at the festivals locally here in Fort Erie handing out containers, gray boxes and blue boxes, and also had their survey right at the table for discussion. So they did make a really strong attempt to engage the public. But I wanted to make a friendly amendment, if it's friendly or not, but to include a report that would speak to the pros and cons with possible cost savings if the region were to bring back waste management into the municipality or to the region.
Well, that's pretty substantive. I wouldn't call that a friendly amendment. That's very substantive. And that's not really on topic here. But you could, again, bring a notice of motion. You could make it returnable on February the 11th, and then that could be part of the discussion. Councillor Zanko.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to mention that with all of these options, I'm just, I do agree with what Councillor Lubert said. I can tell you that my husband is diligent with recycling. He has our entire family of 6 recycling everything organics. It does take probably about a good month to get used to. He had signs placed everywhere. Even visitors would make fun of us when they would come to our house. We have it down pat now. But I'm surprised that they wouldn't select maybe some of these recommendations as far as, for example, start with clear bag use. So residents are kind of slightly pushed in that direction. And then perhaps later on down the road, go to every other week garbage collection. I'm open to getting additional residents' input if we're going to have a public meeting. I can't support the endorsement, especially number 1 at this point. I've just heard so many concerns with regard to various things. So I don't know if during the regional discussions that you were part of, if they had mentioned why they're going to this direction so harshly instead of kind of integration.
Because, at one time we used to be able to put out 4 bags of garbage. Do you remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now it's 2 bags of garbage. A lot of people put out a little bag like this. And so the problem is that there are many people that don't take any initiative whatsoever with respect to the garbage. They're not part of the solution, they're part of the problem. The region is taking the attitude that if we're serious about diverting waste through recycling, then there's got to be strong measures taken. People aren't going to like that. I understand that. I get that. But that's really what the region is doing. And there's a variety of aspects to this. Economic is one, environmental is another. And people that don't separate their garbage whatsoever, they're not with the program. And how do you get them onto the program? I'm just asking the question. I'm not going to give you an answer because I don't know the answer. So we have this report from our staff. with respect to things that we could support, you can support some of them, all of them, none of them, or whatever. So, anything further? Then I was going to Councillor Noyes and then Dubineau.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. I guess my first thing is I'm looking at the date on this is 2021 is when the contract is going to be awarded. So we're in 2019 now, so there is a time frame there. So again, whether the region wants our answer by March, I guess we should give some input as opposed to no input. So I do agree that we do have to have something. I'd be interested in knowing of the 6,500 people, how many of them were from Fort Erie? I mean, if you're looking at all Niagara region, and I don't have my numbers down, but my guess is around a 300,000 population in if all the municipalities. I'm just throwing that number out. So 6,500 may seem like a lot, but if our population of the region was over 300,000, that's not a it's a very small percentage. And again, of that percentage, I'd be very interested in how many of people from Fort Erie responded. And it's interesting that Councillor Zanko mentioned she'd be willing to start with the clear bags and not do the every other week. And I'd be the exact opposite. I would have no problem with every other week. We throw out maybe a third of a garbage bag, everything else gets recycled. But I just have this thing about people seeing my garbage, you know, privacy issues. And also I would be anyway, I think I'm a pretty good recycler. I have 4 of the boxes out every week plus the recycling one. And then I have a third of a garbage bag, but it would personally upset me if it was a clear bag, but that's where I'm coming from, not where Councillor Zanko's coming from. She's the opposite in these kind of things. So I think some more public consultation would be good. So I would support perhaps not moving this, just deferring this for now until we do have some more public consultation, but also get that information from the region about Fort Erie's participation in it.
Mr. Walsh, can you have someone check with Catherine Habermel to find out how many of those online responses came from Fort Erie? Councillor Dubineau.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. Just, if I may, through you to Mr. Walsh, just for clarification. Now, this report here is not saying that we as a council specifically endorse some of the items listed there, such as every 2-week collection. It's just saying we endorse it to be included as part of the RFP process that the region would use to determine the best way to deliver waste management services for the region. Is that correct?
Mr. Walsh.
I would interpret it as you endorse the statement. Whether it's in the RFP or not, you endorse that method.
So you could, Councillor Dubineau, you could amend this to specify that these are recommendations to be, the council endorses to be included in the RFP.
And I think that would be a good idea because while I personally, and from hearing from constituents, I could not endorse to every 2-week collection. People, in the community who spoke with me are up in arms about that, and I think it would be inappropriate for me to not respect their wishes. But at the same time, if this report was just to endorse what is included in the RFP, I think it's fair that the region does include that as an option. I believe residents should be able to see the cost and the savings and how it would affect their tax dollars. And just to say that here, this ultimately is a regional issue. It's going to be a decision of Councillor Encina and you yourself, Your Worship, who make these decisions at the region. And regional councillors are accountable to the residents of Fort Erie, just as we as town councillors are. So if they have a concern about this, they certainly can bring it up to a regional councillor. I don't necessarily think we need to defer this. I know myself, I filled out the survey. It was on social media. They've had it all over town. Going forward, ultimately, I'm of the belief that if we amended this report to say we endorse it for inclusion in the RFP, whatever regional council decides is ultimately their cross to bear.
So the decision-making as to what's to happen isn't final. They do have to get the proposals from the RFP. So Councillor Dubineau, what I have here is that you're contemplating amending paragraph 2 or recommendation 2 to read that council endorses the 8 recommendations within this report to be included in the region's RFP as options.
That's correct, yes.
Is there a seconder for that? Seconded by Councillor Butler. Are there any questions or comments with respect to the amendment that's proposed?
Just going on, just trying to clarify in my mind, the purpose of this is so that we have the public has a better understanding of what each option costs separately and collectively.
Well, the region's going to be putting together an RFP, and they're going to be putting as many options as possible in it to get an understanding of what the cost would be in the responses to the RFP. So, as was said, they may find out that it's cheaper for the region to do weekly. That doesn't really feed into their narrative for trying to increase diversion if it's weekly, because they're trying to encourage people to put more stuff into recycling, which will be weekly. But yeah, that's the intent. Many options is available so that they can get a response to the RFP that will give them a broad spectrum of opportunities to address their policy requirements.
Okay, and I'll support the motion, but I was under the understanding that's what they were going to be doing.
That's what they are going to be doing.
Yes.
Right.
So I don't see where the difference is here.
Well, because the report speaks of these 8 recommendations as being our position that we endorse. Councillor Dubineau's amendment goes to the fact that these are 8 recommendations that we endorse as included in the RFP, so that we're not pinning ourselves down completely. That's the point.
Maybe it's getting late. I'm still not. I'm going to support it, but I think that's.
It is getting late.
Yes,
quite right.
Yes. I will support it, but I think that's basically what they were telling us anyway.
Well, this will be clear then.
Yeah.
Councillor Zanko.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will support the amendment as well, but I do agree with Councillor Noyes that from what I heard, this is exactly what they're including in the RFP. I would just rather support the amendment, which will clearly state that that's the only portion we're supporting, and at least the region has some direction, I guess, from the municipality to move forward. So I will support your amendment.
Anyone else to the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment? That is carried. Any questions or comments to the recommendations as amended? If not, Councillor Lubert, sorry.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Just on the, what are they proposing, or are they proposing anything to make up for the appliance and scrap metal pickup that they want to discontinue? Now, I know from my personal experience that you just put it out on the front of your house, it's gone in 10 minutes. But the thing is I call the region, I tell them I'm putting it out there so they can pick it up on Friday, on my garbage day, and I put it out there and it disappears. If it doesn't disappear, on Friday they're coming, but we don't have that anymore. No. Scrap metal and appliances are discontinued.
Right.
So now, are they going to provide us? Now, I'm sure that there's a lot of guys that will leave you their phone number, just call me, but we don't have that. And is the region going to provide us with anything? Or are we on our own?
The intention would be, if it's discontinued, that we're on our own. The report says that 6% of the people are taking advantage of that. And what's happening is the region's given a call about an appliance that's sitting out on the curb. The region comes to pick it up and it's gone. So that's the predicament that they're in. So their recommendation is that it be discontinued.
Yes, I understand that, but a lot of times when you have a situation similar to this, they'll say, in this event, we will be discontinuing. If you want that service, call so-and-so. Are they going to provide that? Or is the municipality going to be doing that for our residents and saying, hey, call this person, call that person? Or is it just going to be word of mouth?
Well,
who to call?
I don't know that, but that's something that could be taken up with the region. Councillor, or you are the director. You're not the commissioner, you're not a councillor, you're a director.
The region has stated white goods, appliances, can still be dropped off at any of their recycling depots. And certainly there are, as Councillor Lubert points out, I would imagine that if you put it out on your curb on a Tuesday morning, the beneficial pickup would take care of it fairly quickly anyways.
So Mr. Walsh, I maybe you could make a note of this when you have somebody call Ms. Habermel about the other point. Ask her whether the region would consider indicating who residents could contact to take away the appliance if, in fact, you don't have a method to get it to the waste site to begin with.
Yes, I can do that.
That addresses your question.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's a good idea.
Right. Is there anybody else? Then I'll call the amended question. The amendment is as it's written. The second paragraph that council endorses the 8 recommendations within the report to be included in the region's RFP as options. All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. So that then takes us to notice of motion. And Councillor Butler, you have?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I just wondered if we could have a report that just speaks to the pros and cons of having council meetings twice a month versus 4 times a month or even 3 times a month, and see what the other municipalities are doing, because I think there are quite a few that have gone to twice a month, yeah.
So that's returnable on February the 11th.
Okay, thank you. And then I'd like to make a notice of motion with respect to asking the region to provide a report. I guess that would go to the regional. With respect to
The resolution that we would pass,
A resolution?
requesting that the region consider
okay.
whatever it is you want.
Okay, then a resolution to pass by our council for the region to consider bringing in the waste management contract in-house to the region, as
All
opposed to
aspect-
contracting out.
All aspects of waste management?
Yes.
And again, that would be returnable February the 11th?
Yes.
Are there any other notices of motion? Okay, then that takes us to consideration of bylaws. Are there any bylaws that anyone wishes removed from the package? If not, Councillor Dubineau, you have the resolution for first and second reading of the bylaw package.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Butler, that the bylaw package containing 4-2019 to appoint a drainage engineer and execute an agreement with K-Smart Associates Limited for the preparation of a new engineer's report for the Bay Beach Municipal Drain, 5-2019 to authorize the mayor or acting mayor and the treasurer or deputy treasurer of the corporation of the town of Fort Erie to borrow certain sums to meet expenses for the year 2019. 6-20, I think there's a typo on this, but
Yeah, 2019.
yeah, 6-2019 to provide for interim taxes for the year 2019. 7-2019 to accept and declare lands as public highway on the north side of Rebstock Road, 3732 Rebstock Road. Alon Stanley, not even Kripinsak and Paula Nazaruk. 8-2019 to authorize the entry into the execution of an extension and amending agreement with Heritage Arts Legacy Association of Fort Erie. 9-2019 to assume secondary services in the Beaver Creek Estates Phase 1 Plan 59M-330, 1372708 Ontario Inc. Vaughan Gibbons. 10-2019 to accept and declare lands as public highway on the north side of Nye Road, 710 Gorham Road, Reginald Golding and Tara Marie Lucelle. I apologize for mispronouncing names. 11-2019 to designate 221 Phipps Street as being of architectural and historical value of interest is given first and second reading.
All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. That bylaw package is on the floor for any questions or comments. Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Basically, 6-2019 to provide the interim taxes for the year 2019. I had an opportunity of talking to Mr. Jansen when I read it, and I'm just basically bringing this up for clarification. Even though it says that we want to borrow 2.5 million, it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to. It's just a process that happens every year. Maybe we get those roads, eh? That if we had to borrow money for capital improvements, and that we would probably debenture, we probably would then be going to the region as we had in the past, and that even though this is passed on a yearly basis, I don't think he could recall a time where we actually had to use the money. So when somebody's looking at this, I don't want them to think that we're going to whichever bank it was and asking for $2.5 million, because it's there if we need it, but we're probably not going to ask for it.
That's quite correct. Any other questions or comments? Then let's go to Councillor McDermott for third and final reading of the bylaws.
Thank you, Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Zanko, that bylaws 4-2019, 5-2019, 6-2019, 7-2019, 8-2019, 9-2019, 10-2019, 11-2019 are given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and clerk under the corporate seal.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Councillor Noyes, you have the next resolution, which is first and second reading of the confirmatory bylaw.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dubineau that bylaw number 12, 2019, to confirm the actions of council at its council and committee meeting held on January 14th, special council and committee meeting held on January 21st, 2019, and council meeting held on January 21st, 2019, given first and second reading.
All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Councillor Lubert, you have third and final reading for that bylaw.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McDermott, that bylaw number 12-2019 is given third and final reading to be signed by the mayor and the clerk under the corporate seal.
Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. That takes us to scheduling of meetings. Were there any meetings that we missed when we went through that before? Okay, then Councillor Butler, you have the resolution to end these festivities.
I'm the new
Mayor
Chris.
Redekop, I still have some resolutions. Is there a mistake here?
You do. That must be for another meeting. You missed one. Sorry? For the scheduling of meetings.
Scheduling of meetings, yes. On January 30th at 5 p.m., we have an infrastructure committee meeting here in conference room 3 at 5 p.m. And thank you to Mr. Walsh for reminding me of that.
I got two.
Councillor Lubert, you say you've got some additional surplus resolutions? Can you pass them over so I can take a look at them? They're yours. So you can have your meeting after we adjourn this one, because Councillor Butler is going to...
Maybe they're duplicates, I don't know.
Councillor Butler is going to do the motion to adjourn.
Yes, I'm the new Chris. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Dubineau, that council adjourns at 9:01 p.m. to reconvene into a regular meeting of council on February 11th, 2019.
All those in favor? That is carried. Thank you, everyone.